Published at 16th of February, 2019, 7:45 and 13 seconds AM. Chapter 16:10. Another female servant nodded. Cool. She bent to pick up the fish. However, a wind passed by the ground and the dead fish instantly disappeared. Both female servants were shocked, and they realized the dead fish had flown onto Di Fui's palm when they lifted their head to check. Di Fui said with a cold tone, "This fish is dirty now. Go and catch a new one for your master if you want to make soup for her." The fish disappeared again after a flick of his sleeve. No one knew whether it had been destroyed or he put it away. Quietly he turned around and left. Gui Quan was stunned. Celestial Master Swo was such a difficult person to handle. So what now? Just get another one? Anyway, he had witnessed the method Di Fui used to catch the fish. It was nothing difficult. He would get a bigger and better one for his master. Celestial Master, you did not stay at Gu Zijia's residence for a meal. He immediately left after showing Gu Shijio the correct method to use the carriage. When Gu Shijio sent him off, she was idling as she watched his departure, as though she was thinking about something. Suddenly, she seemed to sense something and turned around. Di Fui slowly walked over, followed by Gui Quan, who was jogging toward her behind Di Fui. Gu Shijio moved slightly backward to make way, and Di Fui had already taken a few steps ahead of her at this point. Gui Quan gasped as he ran forward. National Celestial Master, Swo doesn't intend to stay for a meal. He asked me to excuse him on his behalf. Gu Shijio gazed toward Di Fui, and Di Fui also glimpsed at her this time. He was wearing a mask on his face. Hence, Gu Shijio could not see his expression. Besides that, his pupils were too dark to the extent that no one could predict his emotion. She was too tired to make assumptions anymore. Thus, she just nodded with an unremarkable smile. Celestial Master Swo always has a very tight schedule, so it's very common that he cannot stay for a meal. Celestial Master Swo, safe journey. She lifted her sleeve to thank him for visiting. After that, she entered her mansion without turning back at all. Di Fui reluctantly moved his gaze away and walked out of her mansion. Only Gui Quan sent him off, and the scene looked a little lonely. There was a crowd outside the door who just came for fun. They saw Gu Shijio send Celestial Master Yu off earlier. The citizens were somehow happy to see Di Fui alone and lonely when they saw that only a minion sent him off. Countless pairs of eyes were focused on him. They certainly enjoyed the show because it was very rare to see Celestial Masters would get embarrassed. Mu Feng and the other 3 messengers were still waiting in the airship. Initially, they wanted to follow Celestial Master Swo when he entered the mansion. However, Di Fui secretly ordered them to stand by outside. Mu Feng and the rest secretly shook their head when they saw that Di Fui came out alone. He still had the guts to deliver the gift after dumping her. Besides that, it was such a lousy gift which only the Lord dared to give. Mu Feng could feel the heat on his face when he handed the gift earlier. Miss Gu was very considerate for not throwing the gift at his face. What else did he expect from her? In fact, Mu Feng was a little happy seeing the Lord get embarrassed. Certainly, he did not dare to show the excitement on his face. When he saw the Lord glimpse at him with his head up, he quickly stood up and bowed to welcome the Lord on board. The Lord was probably not in a good mood. He raised his head with an order. Release the drapes. Mu Feng remained silent, but he and the rest were confused. That was because the drapes would only be used during big events. Also, the Lord would only release the drapes when he needed to put on a show in front of the crowd. Usually, he would step on the 5 colored drapes and leisurely board the ship. Published at 16th of February, 2019, 6:04 AM. Chapter 1611. 1611. Under normal circumstances, the drapes would accentuate the Lord's adroit kung fu skills. However, right now, Mu Feng thought that it would be better for the Lord to be humble under such embarrassing circumstances. He had better fly himself up. The 4 messengers did not dare to linger. Each of them flipped their sleeves, and 5 colored drapes flew down from the ship and stretched underneath the Lord's feet. Then the Lord flipped his sleeves, stepped onto the 5 colored cloths, and flew himself up. As he was about to reach the ship, Di Fui's body shook, together with the hearts of the 4 messengers. For a moment, Mu Feng believed that the Lord was going to step onto an empty spot and fall. When he was going to reach out and carry him, Difui's body flashed across him all of a sudden, and he was already on the ship. Mu Feng did not manage to carry him. Mu Feng had stretched out his hands in the air for a moment, and took them back. Looking at Difui, who was already on the ship, he was confused. Was he distracted? Mu Feng took a step forward. "My lord." Difui acted like everything was orderly. He said to Mu Feng, "Start the ship." Mu Feng was unable to see the lord's facial expression. Hence, he was unable to gauge whether something was wrong with the lord. He could only follow his orders and start the ship. On their journey he asked, "My lord, where are we going?" Celestial Master's was palace. Difui started meditating after saying that, without uttering even another sentence. Gu Shijie was sitting on the chair in the living area, while Gue Quan was standing below her telling her everything about Difui's journey around the palace. Then, Gu Shijie realized that he had lingered about every conceivable corner of the palace. There was nowhere he paid extra attention to. He, in fact, looked like he was just roaming around. If there were something special to him, it would be how he was especially interested in the pond, from where he had caught 3 fishes. Of course, Gu Shijie was informed of the characteristics of the fishes. Gu Zijia's heart quivered. This place originally belonged to the 8th prince Rong Che. It could also be seen as Missouri Zhao's place since Rong Che was Mo Zhao's incarnation. Mo Zhao was the omen. An omen needed the malicious spirit's resentment to maintain its demonic power. Rong Che had never revealed his demonic power throughout his years being in the palace. He had never had any negative rumor spread about him. Gu Shijie suddenly suspected that there must be something in the pond. She ordered her servants to suck out all the water from the pond. The entire Celestial Master's palace became busy. Luo Zhanyu brought along with him a servant to help out by the pond. Gu Shijie wanted to help out as well, but was told by Luo Zhanyu that she should go back inside as she had been injured, and should not come into contact with water. She had better rest. Luo Xinglan also personally made Gu Shijie some medicine to help her restore the iron in her blood. She sent them to her study room. With the company of her family members, her adorable pets, and her loyal servants, the atmosphere at the National Celestial Master's Palace could not be merrier. However, under such a merry and busy atmosphere, Gu Shijie felt a sense of loneliness, especially when the night fell. It would be another sleepless night tonight. Her wrist had been in great pain. The medicine she used was able to heal her wound, but was unable to eradicate the pain in her heart. She thought that her wrist would, at most, hurt for more than 4 hours. However, even after more than 4 hours, the pain did not seem to diminish. During the day, when she was occupied, she could still bear the pain by shifting her focus momentarily to other things. However, at night, when she was alone in her room, the pain became more excruciating. She turned herself about on her bed, finding it hard to fall asleep. After turning for about 2 hours, she could no longer lay herself down. Thus, she went to look for the white jade carriage instead. She looked into the cart, trying to examine the construction of the array. However, in less than half an hour, she heard the sound made by the jade bell on top of the cart in the wind, like a hypnotizing song, and she felt drowsy. She simply laid herself down in the car and gradually dozed off. It could be due to the pain in her wrist that she did not manage to sleep well. Her brows furrowed into a knot. Occasionally she would cry in pain, and drops of sweat would emerge out of the sides of her head. Moments later, after she fell asleep, a piece of wood on the top of the car slowly drifted off, revealing a jade tablet. The jade tablet was glowing, and the glow gradually covered her body. Within the glow was a person in purple who emerged by her side like a shadow. Published at 16th of February, 2019, 12:20 and 4 seconds p.m. Chapter 1612. 1612. The person dressed in purple was, in fact, Difui. He immediately held her slim wrist. Although he had been careful not to touch her wound, she still cried a little. It was clear from her brows that she was uncomfortable. In fact, sweat emerged from her forehead. "Pain," she uttered a word. He raised his hand to rub off the sweat from her forehead, and uttered gently, "It won't hurt any more in a minute, good girl." His voice was so gentle and hypnotizing. For 8 years she had been used to seeking protection and warmth by his side. Although she was able to separate herself from him in the day, being indifferent towards him, her habits betrayed her in her sleep. She was thinking of relying on him, especially when she was in pain. Gu Shijio moved closer to the light, letting her little face rest on his thighs, and uttered another sentence. Fui, it hurts, it hurts. He felt as if his heart was inundated. Di Fui lifted his arms to hug her, but he suddenly suppressed the urge and sighed. He unwrapped a cloth on her wrist using his fingertips. A red line was emerging on her snow-colored wrist, which was startling. He furrowed his brows slightly. She did not treat her wounds properly. She only applied recovery cream, but did not squeeze out the toxic blood from her body. That was why she was in such a pain. Her wound only looked like it had almost recovered on the outside. However, the toxic from the blade had been trapped inside her body, causing trouble beneath her skin. She was also a great doctor. Hence, it would be unlikely of her not to understand that. Was she deliberately trying to hurt herself? Or was she too preoccupied with something else that she overlooked that? Di Fui stared at the wound on her wrist and drifted off for a moment. Under normal circumstances, her condition would require him to cut open her wound again, squeeze out the toxic blood from within, and later bandage it, so that it could fully recover. However, cutting open her wound again would definitely shock her awake, and she would have to go through the excruciating pain again. He closed his eyes slightly, raised his hand, and pressed it against her wound. A 7-colored light emerged from his palm and shielded her wound. Pale purple blood oozed out slowly from her wound while Di Fui's 7-colored light was working wonders on her wound. A moment later, the bump on Gu Zijia's wrist gradually flattened. On the other hand, Di Fui's hand swelled up a little. When he was done, his entire palm was swollen. He took a glance at it and could not care less. He looked at Gu Shijio again. It must be due to the persistent pain that her little face remained pale. Right now, her cheeks started to show a trace of redness, and her furrowed brows had loosened up as well. She was lying there dressed in a thin dress, out in the open. Suddenly, she turned her body and reached out her hand to hug something, but to no avail. Di Fui's gaze had elements of sorrow. Throughout their 8 years together, she had been used to sleeping in his embrace and having her arms around his waist, like a sloth reluctant to be separated from a tree. Right now, both of them had separated, but she did not manage to correct her habit. She was still used to having her arms around his waist in her sleep. He sat there without moving, observing as Gu Shijio would frown slightly after not being able to hug anything, and would try again repeatedly. Di Fui grabbed a bolster by his side and put it within her embrace. Hence, she hugged the bolster tightly, pressing her face against the bolster. From her facial expression, it seemed that she had dreamed of something. Her eyelashes became wet, and a teardrop flowed down the corner of her eye. Published at 17th of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds AM. Chapter 1613. 1613. Di Fui suddenly moved his gaze away. As he turned, he disappeared. Even a rooted habit could change as one started to lose hope. She would need to be accustomed to a single life sooner or later. In Celestial Masters' palace, Di Fui sat like a Buddha along the balcony. His body trembled all of a sudden, and he gradually opened his eyes. He raised his arms and observed his swollen palms. He silently exercised so that he could remove the toxic which he had sucked out of her body. Droplets of dark purplish blood dropped to the ground. His forehead, that almost looked like a white jade now, had sweat emerging all over. It was obvious that removing the toxic from his body was quite painful. A moment later, the droplets of blood turned bright red, and he was done. Hence he stood up. He tilted his head upward to look at the night sky for exactly 2 hours. The new stars shone brighter, while the old stars were dimmed, and at the southeast corner of the sky was a dark red star gradually displaying its light. Di Fui stared at the dark red star for a long time. He was anticipating something. He frowned slightly. The Star of Omen lit up again, heralding the rebirth of the demon. According to Di Fui's initial estimation, Mo Zhao would probably only be reborn 30 years later. However, the counterfeit celestial masters were rebelled and created a widespread malicious spirit, filling the land with resentment, hence accelerating Mo Zhao's recovery. However, Perhaps it was good that he did so because Di Fui would be able to seize the opportunity and remove him by himself. He could remove such a big trouble. He looked at the stars again. The star of the demon was situated in the southeast area of the night sky. It looked like the place that belonged to the Blue Fox tribe. It was weird. He could sense that Mo Zhao was about a few hundred meters away from him, but why did the constellation show that he was hiding in the southeast? Was it because he had overused his spiritual power? And somehow his senses were in disarray? He looked up to examine the dark red star again. It looked like Mo Zhao would not be able to create any trouble in half a year. Di Fui needed to get himself fully recovered within half a year to prepare himself for the stronger imminent thunderstorm. He went out of the balcony, and a mask automatically covered his face. He kicked Mu Feng, who was sleeping at the door, awake. "Get ready. Let's go back to Biwu Palace." Mu Feng was slow to react. "What? When? Now?" My Feng was speechless. He rubbed his eyes to make himself wide awake. "I will order the other 3 messengers. You come with me. Mu Lei should continue guarding the palace. Mu Yin should check on the Blue Fox tribe. Mu Dian should stay and guard the Celestial Master's palace. All of you should report to me right away if there's any abnormality." "Got it." Mu Feng was brave to ask another question. "My lord, should we send someone to look after Miss Gu?" Di Fui turned and walked away. "There is no need." Mu Feng pouted his lips behind him. The lord would always send a random person to look after Gu Shijiu in the dark no matter where he was, never forgetting. This time he had given up entirely. As expected, the lord could be so harsh sometimes. Mu Feng immediately did as told by the lord. However, he also ordered Mu Dian to be aware of the conditions in Celestial Master's palace, so that he could settle some trouble for Gu Shijiu beforehand. Mu Dian agreed. Gu Shijiu slept soundly. When she woke up, the sun had risen up in the sky. She sat up and realized that he had been hugging a bolster to sleep. The bolster was elongated. Having it in her embrace was rather comfortable. She looked at the bolster, remembering that it had been in a box when she went to sleep. When did she take it out? Had it been her natural habit of hugging something to sleep that made her sleepwalk and rummage through the box? Published at 17th of February, 2019, 6:05 and 4 seconds AM. Chapter 1614. 1614 Gu Shijiu examined the inside of the carriage, and did not see any traces of someone else entering. She shook her head. It seemed like she had either sleepwalked or forgotten what happened. She stared at the bolster blankly for a moment. She knew who she had taken the bolster to be last night. Sometime later, her palms suddenly pressed onto the bolster, and the bolster, which she had taken as her support in her sleep, crumbled into dust and disappeared. She needed to correct such a habit, even replacing it with a substitute if necessary. After destroying the bolster, she suddenly thought of something. She raised her wrist and looked at it. Before she slept, her wrist was in trembling pain, but now it did not hurt at all. She unwrapped the cloth on her wrist, and realized that the wound was now only a fine line that was pale red. Not even visible unless she paid enough attention. She froze for a moment, and heaved a breath of air. It looked like the poison from the blade was not very strong. It was only enough to put her in pain until midnight. The cream she applied was enough to nullify its poisons. She moved her wrist a little to make sure nothing else was wrong, and then threw the cloth away. She proceeded to walk out of the carriage and continue her errands for the day. The pond outside her palace was not too big. 2 days later, the bottom of the pond was already visible. Gu Shijiu and her people stood by the pond, looking at the bottom of the pond that had almost dried up. They were astounded. There were up to a few hundreds of fish in the pond. The fishes were leaping reluctantly in the mud where a few fine bones were separated from each other. How many were there? The pond was where Rong Che had created malicious spirits in the past. He got people into the pond to be fed by the dangerous fish, to transform into malicious spirits for his later leverage. The white bones at the bottom of the pond were the best proof. Cold sweat emerged from Gu Zijia's hands. She had known Rong Che before, and once when she visited him, they had lingered while chatting by that pond. She even washed her hands in the pond. So she had been so close to death once. If Rong Che was planning to kill her, he would simply push her into the water. Then, she would be one of the white bones right now. It was weird that so many people had been murdered in the pond. The place should have a huge amount of malicious spirits, but she did not even realize anything as she was walking by it. Were the malicious spirits removed by Rongche after he had utilized it? This person looked gentle and charismatic, and was once known as the leader among the other 4 princes in town. Who would think that he was such an evil person? Difui's shadow emerged in her mind. Gu Shijio thought to herself that there must be a reason why he suddenly decided to wander around the palace. Was he deliberately reminding her to be careful of the cannibalistic pond? Was he good to her? Was it true? Her heart swayed like a wave. She suddenly had the urge to see him. She did not know why she wanted to see him, but the urge was not capable of being suppressed once it emerged. She took in a breath of air. She would have the opportunity to meet him one day. The fact that Rongche was a demon was made a secret by Rong Jialuo, who saw his relationship with the man as a reason for him to do so. No one else among the people knew of it. Many servants were shocked seeing so many corpses in the pond. They thought that his was counterfeit celestial masters was good deed. Gu Shijio did not say anything in particular besides ordering people to get rid of the dangerous fish from the pond and burn them all in flames. Then, she ordered them to collect the corpses and bones to be buried. Time flew by quickly. In the glimpse of an eye, it had been 5 months. Published at 17th of February, 2019, 12 o'clock and 4 seconds p.m. Chapter 1615. 1615 That 5 months were uneventful. The Haoyue Kingdom had rebuilt their kingdom. Their land was initially occupied by the Zhaoyang Kingdom and the Feishan Kingdom, but under the Lord's order, both kingdoms gave up a large part of their land. Although the land that the Haoyue Kingdom received was not as big as before, building up a kingdom became possible again. Qianlingyu was appointed as the emperor of the Haoyue Kingdom on the basis of his strong family background. Besides that, Qianlingyu was influential at Tianju Hall and had a good relationship with Gu Shijio. Hence, the people and royals of the Haoyue Kingdom would oblige. To add to the fact that he was appointed by the Lord, his orders were followed without opposition. The Haoyue Kingdom almost got ruined once. It had been deserted until its recent rebirth. As a result, Qianlingyu was extremely busy. Although he did not clearly understand the ethics of an emperor, he was smart, and his family was full of strategists who would plan for him. He was also hardworking and willing to learn. Hence, it was also improbable for him to be a failed emperor. Besides that, all battles had subsided, and the people were finally able to rest at ease. Over the past 5 months, Gu Shijio never got to meet Difui. It was as if he had disappeared without a trace. Although she did not get to meet him, Gu Shijio had become reputable over the past few months, almost diminishing that of celestial masters Wa. Wherever Gu Shijio went, there would be a huge welcome. When the people encountered a problem, they would no longer think of Difui. In fact, had no one deliberately mentioned him, no one would even think of him. That was how the world worked. If a person were unable to be substituted by someone, the people would never forget him or her. However, if someone else could replace that person, with time, they would be gradually disappearing in the people's hearts. Gu Shijio was very busy every single day, so the 5 months almost passed without notice. It was as if she had stepped out of the gloom of the relationship. She had been meeting one friend after another. Sometimes, she even went out for a respite in the countryside with her friends. She no longer failed to fall asleep. She slept well, and could mostly sleep soundly until the break of dawn. Of course, she needed to sleep in the white jade carriage, as she would have insomnia being elsewhere. There was no insurmountable obstacle in the world, and there was nothing which time could not bring away. Luo Zhanyu was pleased seeing Gu Zijia's change. Even after being betrayed, she pulled herself together. She could be thinking of living a good life to prove to the heartbreaker that she could be without him, and she could live well without him. Gu Shijio was now focused on improving herself. She knew that she should build up her influence. Under her support, Bailisa started leading the Insure clan, and the laborers within the clan were the people she had brought out of the prohibited area. The senior masters were of level 9 and above. As a result, many were eager to learn from them. Within only a couple of months, They had received a few hundred apprentices, hence becoming a very well-known group. In time, that group would be able to exert its authority over other large groups. Although the Inshur clan's overlord was Bailey Su, everyone's invisible boss was still Gu Shijio. They would always ask for her decision at critical times. This clan was the group most loyal to Gu Zijiu and was the most reliable support for her. Published at 18th of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds AM Chapter 1616. 1616 Speaking of Gu Zijia's influence, although she did not admit to being part of the mermaid tribe, the king of the mermaids still recognized her as his sister. He would visit Gu Zijia's palace and linger a while once every couple of months. Of the 3 kingdoms, 2 of the emperors were her friends. For this reason, the emperor of the Zhaoyang kingdom did not want to be isolated. He often sent in messengers to rally for a good relationship. A couple of Heaven's Gift disciples, except for Hua Wuyan, would always concede to her, and the rest had a good relationship with her as well. As for Hua Wuyan, she was only upset by the fact that Gu Shijio had robbed Di Fui of his influence. However, she did not bring trouble to Gu Shijio either. In short, Gu Shijio had fared well these days. She looked pretty blissful. It was a new year again. Things were merry. Having gone through wars in recent times, they found peace extremely precious now. The first peaceful year needed to be celebrated merrily without compromise. Gu Zijia's celestial master palace was rather merry as well. It was heavily decorated, and everyone was happy. Gu Xietian almost had the wrinkle on his face disappear after having smiled for the entire day. Sorting out matters within the palace had been quite an easy task for him. Although the journey towards getting his wife back was still uneventful, it was good that Luo Xinglan no longer held up a stern face in front of him, and could occasionally talk to him a little. Although they had only been talking about matters of their children, he was pleased enough. As Gu Shijio was a professional alchemist, she would always provide him with some rare supplements. As a result, Gu Zishan's spiritual power improved immensely. Even his face had some changes. He now looked younger and more energetic. Although his son did not recognize him as his father, they would still meet each other very often. Gu Xietian always tried his best to speak to Luo Zhanyu and would stand up for many things for him, hence making Luo Zhanyu feel sorry to be indifferent towards such a father. So he would occasionally talk to Gu Xietian a little. To sum up, everything was changing for the better. At noon on New Year's Eve, Rong Jialua set up a sumptuous dinner to treat all his ministers. He had invited all his influential people over for a glorious gathering. Since they were invitated from the emperor, everyone turned up, except for Celestial Master Zhua. Even Long Sai was there. The presence of so many people was rather uncommon. Everyone celebrated and cheered as they were holding their glasses of beer. Gu Shijio was sitting on a mat, looking at the hall filled with people. She suddenly felt a sense of solitude and isolation. She knew everyone in the hall, but the person who she subconsciously wanted to meet was not there. Why was everyone there, but not him? Darn. She sat still on her mat, with a smile on her lips while drinking beer that others offered her. She would also laugh at listening to the jokes made by the people by her side. She drank another glass of beer again. Looking around the hall filled with flowers, she was suddenly afraid. Was that the life she would be living later on? It was blazing hot in the hall, but instead, she felt an unspeakable cold. The setting was all fancy, but Gu Shijio was overwhelmed by a feeling of solitude. There was a feeling of loneliness amidst the luxury. She was cold to her bones. Di Fui, without you I am still faring well with my life, but I am not sure about yours. Where are you lingering around now? You have attempted in every way to bring Lan Jinka back to life. She has not been revived. Are you in great despair? Published at 18th of February, 2019, 6 o'clock and 9 seconds AM Chapter 1617. 1617 Have you given up? Or are you waiting for something? Di Fui, where are you? Things seem good for me. I have power, status, connections, friends. All of them are around me. Countless people envy me, and a myriad people who worship me. But why can't I be happy? I still feel like crying when I dream about you at night. Di Fui, I want you to see what I have built and achieved. Difui, I miss you. If you come back, I will return this body to you. I don't want to owe you anything. She drank liquor one mouthful after another, and she rarely refused any drink that was given to her. Unsurprisingly, she had been feeling tipsy. Shijio, you can't drink anymore. A hand stretched over and held her wrist that was holding a cup of beer. She turned and saw the face of Long Sai. You will be drunk if you continue drinking. Long Sai took away the glass in her hand. Although Gu Shijio intended to indulge herself in being drunk, she knew her drinking ability too well. It was terrible. It was not proper if she was drunk and misbehaved here. Therefore, she took the opportunity to say goodbye to Rong Jialua and said that she was not feeling well. She was now the National Celestial Master, and her status was very honorable. No one would stop her if she wanted to leave. Rong Jialua and the group of ministers stood up and sent her out. Before she walked out of the main hall, there was a report from outside. The custodian of Celestial Masters Mu Dian has arrived. Mu Dian stepped into the main hall. He represented Celestial Masters to send his regards. He also brought Chinese New Year presents to everyone there. Except for Emperor Rong Jialua, who gotten a jade scepter and a black iron sword, everyone else got the same presents, which were a jade teapot set. Celestial Masters never gave people cheap stuff. The teapot was made of a special jade, which was very delicate and exquisite. Gifts were issued according to a list, so there would not be any mistake. Gu Shijio also got a small teapot set which was no different from others. When Mu Dian issued her the gift, he wanted to say something but felt a little bit embarrassed. In his heart, even if his own master and Gu Shijio had broken up, they used to be lovers. At the very least, he should have given her a more special gift. Mu Dian felt like wanted to buy something else to give to Gu Shijio on behalf of Celestial Masters However, he could not go against the order of the Lord. Gu Shijio looked at other people's gifts and then looked at her own. She smiled. Please send my thanks to your master. She then put the jade teapot into her sleeve and strode out. The wind outside was wildly harsh on Chinese New Year's Eve. Most people were busy at home, so there were not many pedestrians on the street. When the wind blew, the drunken feeling started to take its effects on Gu Shijio. She could not see clearly and had blurry eyes. She seemed to see Difui vaguely. Her transport was still waiting outside. When she walked out, her servants and driver came forward to carry her. Gu Shijio felt flustered in her heart and did not want to sit in her ride. She asked the driver to leave first, and she tried to walk in the snow to release her tipsiness. The driver followed her instruction and left while Gu Shijio proceeded to walk alone on the street. Her dress fluttered in the wind. Since she reached such a high level of spiritual power, she was not afraid of any coldness anymore. She was only wearing a jade white sheer dress on her right now. Published at 18th of February, 2019, 1:25 and 21 seconds p.m. Chapter 1618. 1618 At first, Gu Shijio had a coat on her shoulders. However, she was feeling too hot, so she took it off and threw it into her storage space. She took out the jade teapot and turned it around on her hand. She sneered. Was he trying to send her a message by giving this teapot to her? Did he want her to know that she was now at the same level as his regular counterparts? Well, the last time he treated her as a passerby. This time he finally gave her a gift as respect to her status. She was finally comparable to the people around her. Should she be happy? Difui, thank you for your comfort. Gu Shijio threw the jade teapot into the air, but when it fell, there was an outstretched hand that caught it. Gu Shijio looked to the side and noticed that the person beside her was wearing a white robe. It was Long Sai. You don't want it? Long Sai asked her. Gu Shijio grabbed the jade teapot over and laughed. Why not? This is probably worth a lot of money. I am having a financial crisis now, so it is not a bad idea to sell it for money. She turned and saw a pawn shop not far away on the street, and walked toward the shop. Let's sell this and use the money to buy a drink. Long Sai remained silent, but he followed her. The pawn shop did not operate on Chinese New Year Eve. Fortunately, the shopkeeper was inside the shop. Gu Shijio forcibly opened the door and put the jade teapot on the counter. Boss, how much is this jade teapot? I want to sell it. The shopkeeper was initially upset by her actions, but when he saw the jade teapot, his eyes brightened up. He turned the jade teapot round and round to examine it, and then finally offered a price. 1,000 ingots. Gu Shijio did not negotiate. Okay. Deal. The shopkeeper rushed to issue her a receipt, and pass 1,000 ingots of paper notes to Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio picked up the paper notes and generously patted Long Sai's shoulder. Let's go. I will buy you drink. Long Sai took out the jade teapot he got, and put it on the counter together with Gu Xijia's teapot. I also want to sell mine. The shopkeeper looked at the jade teapot that Long Sai placed on the table. It seemed the same as the one Gu Shijio sold, and the material also looked almost the identical. The shopkeeper pondered a bit before answering. This one is also worth 1,000 ingots. Long Sai smiled and also accepted a few paper notes worth 1,000 ingots from the shopkeeper. The two left the shop side by side. The shopkeeper was excited. The teapot that Gu Shijio had sold away was made by a very rare crystal jade. The unique ability of this jade was that it could transform ordinary wine poured into it to become high-quality wine. The wine would help in soothing and blood circulation. If someone were in a bad mood, he or she could be quickly calmed down with a glass of wine from this pot. This kind of jade was worth a lot even if it was a fingernail in size. Not to mention that it was now the size of a full teapot. The shopkeeper had been traveling around in his early days, and had the privilege of knowing this jade, so he could recognize it. Although Long Sai's teapot looked the same as Gu Xijia's, it was indeed a normal jade teapot. Although it was also worth a lot of money, it was nothing compared with Gu Xijia's teapot. The shopkeeper did not want to alert the two of them as he was afraid that Gu Shijio would change her mind. After the two people left, he turned the jade teapot over and over again, and looked at it for a long while. He was happy and smiled to himself. He was rich now. This teapot was worth at least $1 million. There was high demand for it and very little supply. He was worried that Gu Shijio would regret when she was sober, so he planned to abandon his pawn shop and run away with the teapot. Published at 19th of February, 2019, 12:05 and 26 seconds AM. Chapter 1619. 1619. As soon as the shopkeeper looked up, he saw a man standing at the door. The man stood under the light and was holding a green bamboo umbrella in his hand. The person under the umbrella was all white. Even his hair seemed silvery white. The individual looked like a snow sculpture. Although he did not wear a mask, his face could not be seen. The shopkeeper did not know when this person entered, so he was shocked when he saw him. The shopkeeper subconsciously put the jade teapot in his sleeve and asked, "Sir, are you coming to?" He could not finish his sentence because that person lifted his sleeve and the jade teapot in his hand flew over to him. The shopkeeper was shocked. When he was about to rush over, the snowy white man acted in lightning speed and struck the shopkeeper on his forehead with a piece of paper. He was frozen and could not move at all. After some time he finally recovered. His legs were numb, and he fell to the ground within seconds. The piece of paper on his forehead fluttered. He subconsciously took it and saw that it was a 1,000 ingot paper note. Gu Shijio said that she wanted to buy Long Sai a drink, but it was Chinese New Year Eve, so there was no restaurant operating tonight. She walked along the street from the beginning till the end with Long Sai, but did not find any restaurant that was open. How could they not operate? She wanted to spend money, but had nowhere to spend it. Gu Shijio stood on the corner of the street. She looked at a restaurant and seemed to be pondering. Long Sai was still with her all the way, but knew that she was feeling hurt by Difui. He suggested, "Why don't you invite me to your house for a drink?" Gu Shijio shook her head. "My house is too crowded." Her house had too many members living there, and tonight was the few times that everyone would be home to have their reunion dinner. If she went back home, she would be surrounded by everyone, and there would be no peace for her. Long Sai pondered for a moment before giving a new suggestion. "Let's go to Tianwen Mountain." "It is too far." Gu Shijio shook her head again. Long Sai sighed. "With your current skill, it will take only 2 hours. I have great wine at my place, and you can drink freely." Gu Shijio was stunned. She pondered about his offer and finally nodded. "All right." She directly performed the ground shrinking technique and held Long Sai's hand. Two of them disappeared from the place instantly. The ground shrinking technique could shrink a land of 1,000 miles into 100 miles. Therefore, the distances of a few thousand miles had been shortened to a few hundred miles. With their speed, they took less than an hour to reach Tianwen Mountain. Back in the town, a figure stood in the snow. All one could see was his blue umbrella and long sleeves. He looked at the place where Gu Shijiu and Long Sai disappeared. After standing still for a long while, he coughed and turned away. Inside the pavilion Zhuochen in the Tianwen Mountain, there was a small bamboo table with 2 bamboo chairs. There were a few dishes on the small table that were cooked by Long Sai. The wine served was the best wine in the Tianwen Mountain. The taste was also her favorite, green plum. Gu Shijiu sat opposite of Long Sai. They chatted while savoring the best wine she had tasted. A few years ago, he was her instructor and she was a killer. They used to sit opposite each other. At that time, she wanted to marry him, and he was wondering how to make it happen. Unfortunately, an accident happened, and their relationship had no turning back. Now when they were sitting opposite each other, Long Sai felt like the world separated them. "Shijiu, can we start over again?" Long Sai blurted out. Published at 19th of February, 2019, 6 o'clock and 3 seconds a.m. Chapter 1620. 1620 Long Sai had initially given up on Gu Shijiu. But now that she had broken up with Di Fui, did it mean that he had a chance? Was fate smiling on him right now? He had missed an opportunity before, so he did not want to miss one again. Gu Zijius was stunned, but then she continued to drink the wine. She remembered hearing that the best way to get out of a broken relationship was to get into a new one. Long Sai was her former instructor and used to be her favorite person. If she continued to be with him, could she emerge from this suffering situation? The alcohol had clouded her judgment, and her heart could not take all this drama. "Gu Shijiu, you are useless. He mistreats you, but you still can't forget him. You still hope to see him. Don't you feel shameful? He does not want you anymore and treats you as a stranger and an ordinary colleague. Why do you still think of him? Do you still want to be his regular friend to see him more? Are you pathetic? You are so useless. Gu Shijiu, I look down on you. Really? If you continue to think of him again, you might as well die." Her inner thoughts were discouraging her from thinking of him. However, she wanted to see him again. She thought she could see him at the banquet in the palace, but he did not come. There were many self-deprecating thoughts that swirled through her mind. She drank another glass of wine but choked. She coughed intensely and almost teared. Long Sai got up and patted her back. He also passed her a white handkerchief and let her wipe her face. Gu Shijiu finally stopped coughing, but her face was now covered in tears. She wiped herself with the handkerchief and laughed. "It's been a long time since I got choked. This was an intense one." She snorted and talked in a nasal voice. Her tears were still flowing, so she rubbed her eyes with her hands. Long Sai looked at her for a while and sighed. "Shijiu, you don't have to be strong in front of me. If you want to cry, do it." Gu Shijiu tried to argue. "I didn't want to cry, the wine just choked me." Long Sai looked at her silently. After all, they used to be very close. He naturally knew her very well. He could easily sense when she was pretending. She pretended to be okay over the past few months. Even her brother might not be able to see that she was faking it. All the people thought that she had walked out from the pain and gotten over Di Fui. However, Long Sai was more aware of the truth. That was why he felt so uncomfortable. Things only got worse for him as he watched Gu Shijiu deny her pain. In the end, she could not continue talking anymore. She knew that Long Sai understood her, and that there was no point lying anymore. Initially, Long Fan's soul was sealed in Long Sai's body. However, 5 months ago, when Di Fui found Long Sai, he realized that Long Fan's soul had disappeared from his body. He was not sure if he had escaped from Long Sai's body or had immersed entirely in Long Sai. Di Fui tried to summon Long Fan's soul, but nothing was retrieved. There were only 2 possibilities for this to happen. One option was that he was no longer in the world, and the other was that he had reincarnated and was no longer able to possess other people's body. Di Fui had marked Long Fan's soul before so that he could not possess other people's body anymore. Not even on a clone. Either of these two was a good thing for Longsai, and it was also a good thing for the world, so Di Fui and Longsai no longer investigated this issue. Published at 20th of March, 2019, 2:30 and 6 seconds p.m. Chapter 1621 Chinese New Year. Eve Tu Longsai told Gu Shijio about this matter. Since Gu Shijio had already broken up with Di Fui, she did not expect him to help Longsai. Later, she realized that Longsai was still a Heaven's Gift disciple. Di Fui, as the Lord, had always been a guardian to his disciples. Therefore, he had helped Longsai on his own accord. Regardless of what reason Di Fui had for helping the man, it was still very gratifying to be able to remove Long Fan, who was a tremendous hidden danger. Gu Shijio was quite happy for Longsai, as it must be difficult to know that someone else is sharing your body. In the past 5 months, she had seen Longsai several times. They even drank together twice. At that time, Longsai never pursued or courted her, but just stayed by her side. No one could persuade her on this matter. She could only rely on herself to slowly walk out from the pain. Gu Shijio was still very self-disciplined. Even though she was often sad, she did not want to cry in front of people. Whenever she felt very uncomfortable, she would find a quiet place to stay for one night, like a wounded little beast that just wanted to lick her wounds in peace. It made her a stronger person. Gu Shijio was not very good at holding her liquor. Even if she was here at Longsai's place, she did not want to let herself get drunk and lose control. She placed her hand under the table and began to dissipate the wine out of her body. After an hour, she had calmed down a lot. She sat there and pondered for a long while. Longsai sat next to her and looked at her. Gu Shijio had now buried her face deep in her arms. Longsai could not see her face, but he could see her unspeakable loneliness. It was not a sight that he desired to witness. Shijio, you can go inside to sleep. It is quite cold here. Longsai went forward and wanted to carry her, but he was being obstructed by a wizardry barrier that she set around her. Obviously, she did not want anyone to go close to her at this moment. Hence, Longsai sighed and dismissed the idea of carrying her into the room to rest. Published at 20th of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds a.m. Chapter 1622. 1622 Gu Shijio had a dream. In the dream, she wandered around like a wandering soul. The sky was already dark. Every family ignited the candles and lights they possessed. They also played firecrackers to celebrate Chinese New Year. The young kids were chasing after each other on the street, playing with the fireworks in their hand. There were also countless people gathered in front of the palace gate. Rong Jialua was dressed in a costume and led all his officers to stand at the entrance of the city to greet the people on this festive day. Countless fireworks rose into the air and exploded in the sky. They lighted up the night sky as well as the smiles on everyone's faces. Many families brought their children to gather here. Husbands took the wives' hands, while wives took the children's hand. The family members celebrated the festive season together, and the happiness was reflected on their faces. Gu Shijio felt that she was floating in the crowd of people. No one could see her, but she could sense the joy of the people around her. Once upon a time, she used to celebrate Chinese New Year's Eve together with him. Her happiness seemed to be overflowing at that time. She only hoped that every year would be as happy as that day. However, she did not expect that her happiness was like a bubble and that it would be popped so fast. Subconsciously, she went to Celestial Masters Wu's house. The house of Celestial Masters Wu was somewhat deserted and had no festive atmosphere. Most of the maids were back home for the new year, and only a few of them were on duty. They were familiar faces to Gu Shijio. They did not notice her even though she drifted away in front of them. From the conversation of these maids, she heard that Di Fui was at the Dingtao Pavilion attending to guests. The Dingtao Pavilion was one of the favorite places of Gu Shijio when she stayed in his house. It was a building in the middle of the mountain. It was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and surrounded by water from another side. The sides that faced mountain were filled with blue pines and cypresses. When the trees swayed, they looked like the waves on the sea, and the scenery was beautiful. Di Fui would not simply serve guests at this place, but he always brought her here to drink. Who would he be serving here now? She desperately wanted to see him. In her dreams, she could do anything she wished to, so she went to find him. Finally, she saw him. It has been a good 5 months now, but she was shocked. His hair. Why did his hair become white now? He was wearing a light blue casual robe. His eyebrows were still majestic, while his eyes were bright like stars, and his face was still handsome. It was the face she was familiar with. The only thing different was that his black hair was now white like snow. At the same time, she also saw the guests who were served by him. They were the Lan siblings, Lan Yaoguang and Lan Jingyi. Although Lan Yaoguang had always been visiting Gu Shizhou lately, Lan Jingyi had never done so. It was the first time Gu Shizhou saw her in 5 months. The little girl looked at Di Fui, who was boiling tea. She looked distressed as she uttered, "Brother Huang, why did your hair turn white all of a sudden?" Di Fui was stunned for a moment. He did not speak but continued to boil the water. Lan Yaoguang hit his sister to hint her not to bring up the matter. Lan Jingyi ignored him and pretended like she did not understand his intention. She continued to look at Di Fui and asked, "Brother Huang, is it because you are too distraught that my sister failed to come back to life? I have heard about a story whereby a loving couple who were separated from each other ended up with a head of white hair because they were too desperate to see each other." Published at 20th of February, 2019, 6:05 and 4 seconds AM. Chapter 1623. 1623. Lan Yaoguang frowned and finally stopped her. "Jingyi, don't talk nonsense. Our sister has resurrected. She just refuses to admit it." "No. She is not our sister. The one who resurrected is Gu Shizhou. Damn. The spiritual soul is the main soul among the three. It should shape the main character of a person, while the awareness soul should only be an auxiliary soul and should not have its own consciousness. I didn't expect this little soul to have her own consciousness, as well as control the body that should belong to our sister. Because of her, our sister is not coming back anymore." Her voice was a little choked. "I want my sister. I want our sister to come back." Lan Yaoguang interrupted her. "Little sister, please stop talking. Shizhou is reborn with our sister's soul. That means she possesses part of our sister. You can't refuse to recognize her." "But I want the spiritual soul of my sister to come back. That is my real sister. Gu Shizhou possesses our sister's body." Lan Yaoguang frowned. "Our sister has died in the past. Her soul was supposed to be dissipated. Brother Huang has tried very hard to keep part of her memories. The rest of her memories have been scattered. It is considered lucky to get the awareness soul to reincarnate. It is impossible for the spiritual soul to remain intact. How do you want Brother Huang to get you the complete soul of our sister?" Lan Jingyi was not convinced. Since the awareness soul could be stored and reincarnated, how do you know that the spiritual soul cannot have the same process? Perhaps it has also been reincarnated. Lan Yaoguang shook his head. "There is no such lucky thing." Di Fui, who had been sitting there quietly, suddenly spoke. "Jingyi is right. The awareness soul cannot be treated like her sister. I will try my best to find her spiritual soul so that the real Jinka can come back." Lan Yaoguang was shocked, and Lan Jingyi's eyes lit up. "Brother Huang, that means you do not recognize the current impostor as our sister Jinka, right?" Di Fui sounded calm. "She can't be Jinka. I have made a mistake." Lan Jingyi took a deep breath. Jingyi always knows that Brother Huang wants to let her real sister come back. She thought of something. "What about the body? The little awareness soul has possessed the body that we safeguarded for a few years. Even if we can find the spiritual soul back, there is nowhere to let her soul reborn." Di Fui looked up for a moment, then gently said, "It's all right. The overlord of the Tianwen clan, Long Sai, can create a clone body. Once we are more confident of retrieving the spiritual soul of Jinka, I will ask Long Sai to recreate a similar body, so that Jinka can be resurrected." Lan Jingyi felt touched. "I always knew that Brother Huang really misses our sister Jinka. You have planned for her resurrection for 1,000 years. Sai, you have been working hard and waiting for so many years. In the end, you let Gu Shizhou take advantage of it. You must be extremely sad, and that is why your hair turned white." Di Fui raised his hand and took a sip of tea. He did not speak. Lan Jingyi seemed to think of something again. Oh yeah, if our sister really comes back to life in the future, what should we do with the counterfeit Gu Shijio? Di Fui softly answered. Don't worry about her. I will treat her as a stranger in the future, and will not pamper her as Jinka. Lan Jingyi looked dissatisfied. It's just too beneficial to her. Well, forget it, as long as Brother Huang doesn't like her anymore. Otherwise, when my real sister Jinka wakes up, she will be very sad. Published at 20th of February, 2019, 12 o'clock and 4 seconds p.m. Chapter 1624. 1624 Di Fui raised his glass. Don't worry. I only have Jinka in my heart. Everyone else means nothing to me. But she is reincarnated with Sister's awareness soul. If she is alive, when Sister is back she would not have a complete soul. Di Fui calmly answered. Since the awareness soul can be reincarnated alone, the spiritual soul can also do the same. Don't worry to prevent another accident. I will help Jinka to build a new awareness soul, so that she will have complete consciousness. Lan Jingyi was obviously getting happier as the night progressed. I know that Brother Huang is very sincere to our sister. If that is the case, there should not be any mistakes in the future. She stood up and looked at the blue pine outside the room. The name of this place is Pavilion. Jingyi knows that her brother-in-law is crazy about her sister, so she is foolproof. She stood up and looked at the sea of blue outside the attic. This place is called Tingtao Pavilion, and the blue pines look like the sea. You have been yearning for the sea. Tingtao sounds like you always want to listen to the sea. I know that sister also liked to listen to the sea in the past when she was still alive. The three of them continued to chat, and enjoyed the tea inside the pavilion. It looked like a beautiful portrait when they sat there. Gu Shijio was hidden in the dark. She listened and watched everything that happened in the pavilion, and her body turned cold. He became white-headed because he missed Lan Jinka too much. He only had Lan Jinka in his heart. He was like Yanggua in the God of the Condor Heroes, who had been waiting for the little dragon girl for 16 years. In the end he did not manage to see her, and his hair turned white overnight. While Di Fui had been waiting for Lan Jinka for 1,000 years, at the end the one who resurrected was Gu Shijio instead of Lan Jinka, whom he missed the most. Thus his hair also turned white. It turned out that Di Fui was only good to her was because she was the awareness soul of Lan Jinka. He treated her as part of Lan Jinka. Now he finally understood that she was not Lan Jinka, so he treated her as a stranger. Without the identity of Lan Jinka, she was no one in his heart. Her heart felt like it was being filled with water. It was swelling up. She only felt her legs were weakened. Suddenly she was stunned, and then she seemed to be falling from a high-rise building. She was awake. She trembled and opened her eyes. She was now surrounded by white bamboo, rattan chairs, and ancient wooden tables. She saw Longsai and heard a piano playing. She looked outside. The sky was already dark. There were no stars on the eve. She was lying on a soft couch and covered with a soft quilt, so she did not feel cold. She then looked at the hourglass in the corner. It was already 4 in the morning, and it was near to the dawn. This New Year's Eve was about to pass. Longsai was playing the piano that she heard. The sound of the piano was melodious like a lullaby, which made people feel calm. No wonder she heard this sound in her dreams. It turned out to be the music played by Longsai. She remembered that when she fell asleep, the sun was just about to set. It was such a long dream. Fortunately, no matter what nightmare it was, she was able to wake up from it. Her heart had drowned, but the mind was conscious. Are you awake? Are you thirsty? Do you want some water? Longsai finally stopped and passed a glass of water to her. He inadvertently touched her fingers and he frowned. How can your hands so cold? He wanted to check her pulse. Gu Shijio chuckled and avoided his hand. I have a cold body. My hands and feet can easily get cold. I am fine. After all, she woke up after drinking alcohol, so she was a little thirsty. She swallowed the full glass of water. It was warm, sweet honey water, so when it flowed into the throat, it warmed up her body a lot. Published at 21st of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds a.m. Chapter 1625. 1625 Long Sai looked at Gu Zijia's face. Although she looked quite pale, there was nothing wrong with her, so he was less worried. He jokingly asked her, "What did you dream of? You said in your sleep." "What did I say when I slept? I could not hear it clearly, but you mumbled a lot." Gu Shijio rubbed her eyebrows. "I didn't know I talked in my sleep. Well, it was just a dream." She looked at him again and asked, "Have you been playing the piano for me?" Long Sai smiled. "I suddenly felt like playing the piano. Since it is Chinese New Year's Eve, I can take this opportunity to stay up for the new year. Did I disturb your sleep?" Gu Shijio stretched her body and sat up. "Of course not. Your music is quite hypnotic. It doesn't sound like praise, but it is an accomplishment to be able to make you sleep soundly." Two of them talked and laughed for a while. Gu Shijio looked around and noticed that Long Sai was quite caring. This pavilion was initially an ordinary pavilion. Now, to let her sleep here, he especially set up a canopy for her. No wonder she felt warm. She never expected to celebrate her Chinese New Year's Eve at this place. However, it was quite a meaningful night. Gu Shijio was no longer sleepy, so she got up and asked Long Sai to go back to rest. However, Long Sai refused to go. "It is quite common that I don't sleep for a few nights. Moreover, I still have to stay up for the new year. If you feel bored, why don't we play chess?" He pulled out a chessboard and pointed to it. "Please." Gu Shijio was quite good at playing chess. In the past, she used to challenge Long Shi. Both of their skills were comparable with each other, so they had won and lost to each other before. It was a long and quiet night, so it was a good time to play chess. Thus Gu Shijio agreed to play with him. Long Sai found that she was not in good condition when she played in the game tonight. She kept losing pieces, and did not have any strategy. Playing chess was like battling in war. One could easily expose their state of mind to their opponent based on their style of play. Long Sai could see that Gu Shijio had a confused mind now. Both of them played a few matches, and Gu Shijio lost all the games. She was bombarded several times by Long Sai. Gu Shijio rubbed her forehead that was already reddish. She looked to the outside and said, "Finally, the day has arrived." Long Sai gazed at her. "Yes, no matter how dark the night is, there will always be a bright day coming after." Gu Shijio smiled. "It sounds like a motivational quote. Since when did you become a motivational guru?" Both of them chatted for a while before Gu Shijio suddenly looked up and asked Long Sai, "How is the clone body I asked you to make?" Long Sai was stunned and said, "It is almost finished." He sized Gu Shijio up. He had realized that Gu Zijia's current body was her original body. There was nothing wrong with it. 5 months ago, Gu Shijio found Long Sai and asked him to create a clone for her. At the time, Long Sai was very puzzled, and asked her what she was trying to do. She did not answer him. She only said that it might be useful in the future. Long Sai would never reject her, so he made it for her. He was more skilled in making a clone body now, so he managed to create one in 5 months. Gu Shijio stood up and said, "Bring me there." It was a familiar ice room with a familiar crystal coffin. A familiar face lied inside the crystal coffin. Gu Shijio stood in front of the crystal coffin and looked at the beauty in it. Published at 21st of February, 2019, 6:05 and 4 seconds a.m. Chapter 1626. 1626 The clone that lied in front of her was much stronger than the one made by Long Sai in the past. It could be compared with the one made by Long Fan, or could be even stronger. The spiritual power of this body was already level 8. It was a very rare existence. Gu Shijio stared at herself in the coffin and had a bitter smile. She was originally a clone soul. Perhaps she should belong to a clone body after all. She asked Long Sai, "Would it be easy for me to enter this clone body?" Long Sai was shocked. He immediately took her wrist and checked her vein. After a while he released her. "Your current body is perfect and has no problem. Why do you want to change it?" Did she think that changing her body was like changing clothes? Gu Shijio looked down. She did not know why she had this crazy idea. Di Fui always wanted Lan Jinka to be resurrected and blamed Gu Shijio for possessing this body, and asked her to let it go. Although this body was the original body of the daughter of General Gu, Difui also spent a great effort to upgrade it to level 10, even when the body was asleep. Moreover, this original body was engaged to Difui in the past. In that case, this original body had a great relationship with Difui, so she should just let it go for him. Since they had already broken up, everything should completely be cleared off. After she returned the original body and entered into the clone body, she owed him nothing anymore in the future, and would not have any relationship with him. Perhaps after changing her body, she would be able to completely get out of this heartbreaking love, and be a brand new self. She did not want to explain her thoughts to Long Sai. She just looked at him seriously and asked, "Can you change it?" Long Sai had a headache and sighed. "You can change it. However, you are now at level 10 spiritual power, and the spiritual power of this body is only level 8. If you change it now, your spiritual power will deteriorate badly." "It's fine. I can work hard again." Long Sai shook his head. This can't be achieved easily by only practicing. Gu Shijie managed to achieve a level 10 spiritual power, due to many external factors that could not be replicated. For example, the core array that was full of spiritual power, the double physical and spiritual cultivation she did with Difui, the rare herbs that Difui collected for her, as well as the guidance that Difui had provided her. With all these factors, she could upgrade from level 8 to level 10 in 8 years, and it was an entirely rare case in this continent. Although Long Sai and the other Heaven's Gift disciples had gotten the best resources and the best way to cultivate spiritual power, they still spent decades to upgrade to level 9. Gu Shijie was smart, but if she changed to a new clone body again, she would probably need to spend decades to reach level 9 from level 8. As for level 10, it would depend on fate. She would probably need to take a few hundred years, or perhaps would not be able to achieve that level in her lifetime. Shijie, your original body is still the best. If there is nothing important, don't simply change it. With your current level 10 body, you can be immortal and maintain the young looks forever. If you change bodies, even if you practice to level 9, you can live for only 1,000 years at most. Long Sai tried to persuade her. Immortal? Gu Shijie smirked. She had no interest in immortality. She thought that 1,000 years was already far too long. Instructor Long, I don't think about being immortal. I just want to be in a body that is owned by me. If it is possible, I would like to swap to it shortly. Published at 21st of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds p.m. Chapter 1627. 1627. There were still some memories of Longjinka in this original body. Gu Shijie did not want to have these memories. She did not want to share the same body as his lover. It would always remind her that she was only a substitute for Longjinka. Long Sai persuaded her again. He almost listed a comprehensive list of the disadvantages of changing her body. However, Gu Shijie had made up her mind and insisted on it. In the end, Long Sai had no choice but to agree to change her body. However, because of the unique features of her soul, it would easily hurt her soul if she continuously changed bodies. It would even make her soul dissipate a little. To be secure, it was necessary to use a kind of herbal fruit as a complement. This kind of herb was very rare. It grew on volcanoes and could only be harvested once in a few years. Whenever it cropped, it only lasted for a few days. Once the seed was collected, it had to be used within a month. Otherwise, its benefits would diminish. Fortunately for Gu Shijie, this herb was going to be harvested very soon. When the time came, Long Sai would pick it personally, and he would help Gu Shijie to achieve the outcome she desired. Once they arranged for a viable date to get this done, Gu Shijie returned to her own house. She did not intend to tell Difui about this matter. She would just deliver the original body back to Celestial Master's house. Her family members were worried about her since she did not return to her home for the whole night. Gu Xietian and the rest were busy looking for her, and when they saw her return, they felt relieved. Gu Xietian asked, "Jior, where have you been? Everyone has been looking for you. Last night I went to Celestial Master's house, but he was not there. His servant said he did not go back at all." He did not go back at all. In her dream last night, she clearly saw that he was serving the land's sibling at Pavilion. Other people's dreams might be just dreams, but her dreams were often real. It was actually her soul that left her body, so everything she saw was all real. The reason why the servant said that he was not back was that he did not want to let Gu Xietian disturb him anymore. After all, everything he had done was indicating that he treated Gu Shijio as a stranger. Father, I have nothing to do with him anymore. In the future, if you want to look for me, you should stop going to his house, Gu Shijio said in a serious tone. Even if she were going to die, she would never go to Celestial Master's house anymore, so she also would not want her family members to go there as well. Gu Xietian knew that she was serious about it. He kept silent. He nodded and continued to ask Gu Shijio where she had spent the night. Gu Shijio simply answered, I went to the Tianwen clan for a drink. I had drunk quite a lot, so I decided to spend a night there. Gu Ziishan had actually been worried about her daughter's marriage. After listening to what Gu Shijio said, he had an idea in his mind. In fact, the overlord of the Tianwen clan was a perfect match for his daughter. He would like to get more information from his daughter. However, he also noticed that his daughter did not look good and did not want to talk more about it, so he stopped asking her questions for now. He planned to ask Long Sai when he met him face to face. In fact, as compared to the mysterious Di Fui, Gu Xietian was more interested with Long Sai, who was quite capable and had a more mature character. Di Fui's character was like the sea. He was mysterious and his mood always changed. He could pick up huge waves and send people into the abyss at any time. Long Sai was more like a mountain. He was quiet and steady. He was straightforward and reliable. He also had a deep affection for his daughter. If his daughter married him, he would definitely pamper her a lot. Women should always look for a suitable husband. It was only considered a complete life if both the husband and wife can work together for a lifetime. This was always the mindset of Gu Xietian. It was now his top priority to help his daughter to get a good family. Published at 22nd of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds AM. Chapter 1628. 1628. There were many good men in this world, but Gu Xietian wanted the most outstanding one for his daughter. Gu Xietian thought that Long Sai would come to visit over the next few days. However, he waited until the 15th day and did not see him. Gu Xietian was somewhat disappointed. It seemed that he had misunderstood the situation. Overlord Long had no affairs with his daughter. Otherwise, if his daughter had stayed a night with him and something had happened, Long Sai would have come to explain. Gu Xietian had been testing his daughter several times over the past few weeks, and felt that his daughter had no interest in Long Sai. He began to switch his attention to the men in the Feixing Kingdom. He secretly helped his daughter to source for a suitable husband. After he released the news, there were a lot of matchmakers who came to the house to propose. Gu Xietian chose a few candidates that he was quite pleased with. Then he invited them to visit the house. Gu Shijio suddenly discovered that there were a few young talents who came to her house over the past few days. When they came, they claimed that they came to visit General Gu. However, Gu Xietian always had excuses to let Gu Shijio serve them. Gu Shijio also wanted to find something to keep herself busy, so she did not reject to serve the guests as long as she had spare time. However, after she had served a few, she finally realized that something was not right. When she did not have spare time to serve the guests, these young talents would just linger in the house for a while before leaving. But once she was there to serve the guests, these young talents always refused to leave and always talked to her as long as they could. They always asked her to go around the garden. Every one of them looked at her with watery eyes that were full of affection. It made Gu Shijio feel uncomfortable. After a few days of being fooled, Gu Shijio finally understood the intention of Gu Xietian. She thought that it was quite hilarious. She had a long talk with Gu Xietian. She was straightforward to express that she felt very disgusted with this action. If Gu Xietian continued to matchmake her with these young talents, she would kick these people out of the house. Her threat was very useful. Gu Xietian finally stopped looking for young talents, and Gu Shijio finally got back her peace for several days. Of course, Gu Xietian did not give up entirely. However, he also thought that those young talents did not match with his daughter. He pondered for some time, and suddenly thought of a person, the Count Xiaoyao Long Moyan. Long Moyen was one of the four most honorable young men in the capital. His ranking was at par with Rong Jialua and Rong Che. This person was a very low-profile person. He was handsome, and he was still single at this age. Based on the rumors, he fell in love with a lady, but he had only met her once. After that, he could not find this lady anymore even after so many years. Therefore, Gu Xietian invited Long Moyen to the house to be his guest. He told Long Moyen that there was something that he wanted to discuss with him. Long Moyen was happy to come, so Gu Xietian held a banquet in the garden of the pavilion. After they drank a few glasses, Gu Shijiu came over to them. These days were the full blossoms of the plum flower. Every day, Gu Shijiu would come to the garden to walk around and enjoy the plum flower. She did not expect that there was a banquet in the garden, and also did not think that the guest was someone she used to know, Long Moyen. Gu Shijiu had a fantastic memory. She still remembered him. In the past, when she was in the Iceland, she used the identity as Chongsheng to meet this Count Xiaorao. Both of them had a good time in the Iceland. She had not seen him for several years. Long Moyen still looked young. He looked like he was 20 years old. He was handsome and elegant. It might be due to his improved spiritual power that he even had an unspeakable honorable temperament around him, and looked like a fairy. The pavilion was built in the plum grove. When Long Moyen sat inside the pavilion, it looked like a portrait together with the blossomed plums outside the pavilion. Published at 22nd of February, 2019, 6:05 and 4 seconds AM. Chapter 1629. 1629. Gu Shijiu had a noble status now. Even young masters from rich families had to bow to greet her if they saw her. Thus, Long Moyen stood up and greeted Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu was annoyed by these courtesies, hence, she waved and allowed him to be seated. Gu Shijiu had a relatively good impression of Long Moyen. Hence, she decided to stay for a chat. Gu Xietian was very happy with that, and he just excused himself and left them alone at the pavilion after a brief introduction. Certainly, Gu Shijiu felt helpless and annoyed because she knew it was a date arranged by Gu Xietian. She did not want to entertain him anymore, and was about to leave with an excuse. Suddenly, Long Moyen sighed. National Celestial Master, please allow me to ask this question. Were you forced to come on a date with me? Gu Shijiu did not expect him to bring this up. You're right, said Gu Shijiu as she looked at him. You hate it. Certainly. Me too. My father has been pushing me every day, but someone has already won my heart, and I wouldn't get married if I can't find her. Nonetheless, my parents just couldn't stop nagging me. Long Moyen came clean about his situation. Gu Shijiu was surprised. So, I have an idea, but it would be great if you could give me your opinion. Go ahead. Since both of us hate speed dating, why not we pretend to date and meet every 3 to 5 days? This could probably stop them from forcing us, and both of us could also get some peace. In fact, that was not a bad idea. After all, many young people in the modern era also got people to act as their partner to entertain their parents who forced them to date. She did not expect Long Moyen to know of this modern strategy as well. Since Gu Shijiu was annoyed by Gu Ziexin's arrangements, she decisively agreed after a quick ponder. Therefore, they became slightly closer after they came to an agreement. Gu Shijiu asked, since you already have someone in your heart, why did you not marry her? Long Moyen sighed. I cannot find her. Gu Shijiu frowned while Long Moyen continued. Honestly, I've seen her only once. I have tried my best to find her, but my efforts have been in vain. Love at first sight? Gu Shijiu seemed to be interested to know more. What's her name? Perhaps I can help you. The Inying Association was now under her supervision, and they were very efficient in collecting information. Thus, they should be able to find the girl if Long Moyen was willing to tell her. Long Moyen said without hesitation, her name is Chongsheng. I've met her at the mysterious Iceland. Gu Shijiu remained silent. Was this destiny calling? Chongsheng was created as a fake identity. Gu Shijiu sighed. Is this considered love at first sight? Maybe she gave you a fake name? Or perhaps even her nickname? Why are you so obsessed to find her? Long Moyen smiled bitterly. I should have known. However, I can't get her out of my mind. Anyway, let's find her first. What if she is dead? Please don't curse. I believe she's still alive. Gu Shijie was speechless. Alright, she should find another possibility. Perhaps she has gotten married? If she found her one and only, I'll give her my blessing. However, I must find her and make sure she's done so. Gu Shijie was speechless again. Published at 22nd of February, 2019, 12:10 and 6 seconds p.m. Chapter 1630. 1630 Gu Shijie did not want to reveal the truth. Otherwise, it would be another trouble for her. She pondered and decided to revisit her fake identity as a married Chongsheng. She wanted Long Moyan to give up on her. Since they had to act like they were a couple, Gu Shijie and Long Moyan met to have a meal together once every few days. Both of them interacted like normal friends. In fact, Long Moyan was a very caring companion. He was quite the gentleman too. Apparently, he did not see her as the almighty national celestial master. It was 14th of January. Gu Shijie went out for a stroll at the plum garden with the Muscle and Lu Wu. She was in her white jade carriage with the wind caller as the driver. Surprisingly, she bumped into Long Moyan again. Thus, both of them went to the plum garden together because Long Moyan intended to go as well. Long Moyan was riding on a white house, and it perfectly matched the white jade carriage owned by Gu Shijie. One was in the cabin, and another was riding a horse beside the wagon. Occasionally, Long Moyan would talk to Gu Shijie though the curtain was down. The Muscle was listening to the conversation while it was resting at a corner inside the cabin. Suddenly, it talked to Gu Shijie confidently. Master, he is quite good. I think he could be a fairy in the future. Gu Shijie did not expect the Muscle to say such a thing. How do you know? I could somehow smell an immortal aura from him. And his bone frame is very special. Based on my experience of eating countless of humans, his bone frame is only second to Celestial Master's Wa. Gu Shijie was surprised because according to her observations, Long Moyan had not achieved a level 8 spiritual power. There were many people in the world could beat him. How could he be comparable to Difui? She opened the curtain and silently glimpsed at Long Moyan. Somehow, she realized Long Moyan looked slightly more spiritually charming compared to the last time they met. Perhaps he was like a dead majestic item which finally came alive. The blooming period of the plum flower should be in early December. It did bloom once back in December. However, she did not expect the plum flower to bloom again around the 15th of January. It looked like a sea of red clouds as she looked from afar. The plum flower did not usually bloom twice. However, when it bloomed passionately for the second time, the imperial officers would claim that His Majesty was brilliant. Hence, the earth was showered with blessings from the immortals. Certainly, the citizens could not wait to share with their friends whenever they found such an unusual phenomenon. Therefore, Gu Shijie and Long Moyan also bumped into a crowd along the journey. Of course, everyone recognizes Gu Shijie's carriage. Hence, many people greeted her along the way. The Muscle opened the curtain and took a glimpse. Master, many people are following us. Gu Shijie saw it as well. All the citizens were following behind her carriage after greeting her. Perhaps, they just wanted to get some good luck from National Celestial Master's carriage. The citizens were always like that. Hence, Gu Shijie did not care much about it. She took a glance ahead and finally saw a piece of red further ahead. They were almost there. Hey, it is Celestial Master's Wa. That's his ship. Someone cheered from the outside. Gu Shijie went stiff in the cabin, but she was back to normal almost immediately. She opened the curtain and looked out the window. Indeed, a blue ship was traveling beside her, and that was Difui's vehicle. His blue ship was usually high in the sky. Hence, Gu Shijie took a few more glimpses because it was very rare for it to travel on the land. In fact, it was like a floating ship rather than moving on the ground, because there was about a half-foot gap between the ship and the ground. Published at 23rd of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds a.m. Chapter 1631. 1631 The ship was moving at lightning speed, and it cut into Gu Shijie's lane in the blink of an eye. It blocked Gu Shijie's carriage from moving forward. After half a year, Gu Shizhou finally met Difui again. Difui was sitting inside the ship. He was wearing a purple robe with a mask on his face. His silver hair was beautiful under the snow. His aura was as strong as usual, and he was like a deity watching the world from a higher altitude. The citizens quickly bowed to greet him, and Long Moyen also got down from his horse to do the same. Gu Shizhou was at the same level as him now. Hence, she did not have to get down to greet him. Therefore, she quietly sat in the cabin and shifted her gaze away from his silver hair. This time, there was only Mu Feng and a young man in a black robe inside Difui's ship. Difui made a gesture to signal the people to rise. Upon doing so, he turned his attention to Gu Shizhou. It's such a coincidence, Celestial Master Gu. I'm surprised to see you here. Celestial Master Gu? Gu Shizhou chuckled sarcastically. The manner in which he addressed her was getting stranger every time they met. Oh yeah, it's such a coincidence. Gu Shizhou smiled with a beautiful grin. She then added, Celestial Master Zhua, would you mind to move a little? You've blocked our way. Difui glimpsed at her in Long Moyen. Where are you heading to? Gu Shizhou immediately answered. I think it has nothing to do with Celestial Master Zhua. Difui was at a loss for words and casually replied, Indeed, I am simply asking you. After that, he moved his ship slightly to let Gu Shizhou go. Gu Shizhou did not hesitate to move past his ship. Of course, Long Moyen followed from the back and continued their journey. Though they had made some distance, Difui could still hear the conversation between Long Moyen and Gu Shizhou. Shizhou, we almost arrive at the plum garden. It's interesting to see the plum flower in the snow. You're right, we should enjoy it later. The white jade carriage was no longer in sight while Difui's blue ship remained stationary. Mu Feng glimpsed at his master with sympathy. Perhaps Miss Gu has gotten over their relationship, but his master was getting more and more unpredictable in this aspect. The young man in black could not stop shivering from the cold. He wanted to urge Celestial Master Zhua to enter the capital as soon as possible. However, he did not dare to do so. Difui remained stationary and silent in the ship, as though he was an ice sculpture. His strong aura has made the young man zip his mouth. Mu Feng took a glance at the young man as he shook his head. Are you cold? Asked Mu Feng as he tapped on the young man's shoulder. The young man stuttered. Of course, said the young man without denial. I thought you're quite strong and capable since you possessed a level 6 spiritual power, and claimed that you're a Heaven's Gift disciple. However, it appears that you can't even stand a little chill? The young man in black was speechless. Usually, he could indeed resist the cold, and he was perfectly fine even if he only wore a piece of thin clothes during the winter. However, he had no idea why he felt so cold since he boarded Celestial Master's with ship, and the chill even penetrated his bones. He tried his best to endure, and he could not wait to enter the capital so that he could warm himself when they arrived at the hotel. He felt sad because he was confident in his gifts. Unfortunately, he accidentally claimed that he was probably a Heaven's Gift disciple when he joked with his buddies on the 29th of December. Celestial Master Zhua has then paid him a visit on the night of Chinese New Year's Eve. His nightmare begun since that day, and it has never ended until today. Published at 23rd of February, 2019, 6:05 and 8 seconds AM. Chapter 1632. 1632 Mu Feng, notify Gu Shizhou as the messenger of the Lord that she is to make the necessary preparations for auditioning the Lord's apprentice tomorrow. Difui sent a sudden message to Mu Feng. It came out of the blue. Mu Feng was taken by surprise. Hasn't this matter always been under the charge of the Lord? I don't think she would hand this mantra to her and order her to do as she is told. You four will need to guard her later. Do remind her about that. Difui then retrieved a piece of paper. Mu Feng took the paper and just stared at his master. Master, are you trying to pass on everything that Celestial Master Zhua does to her? He always thought that his master did not want to take on the identity of Celestial Master Zhua anymore, and thereby wanted to shift all of his responsibilities to Gu Shizhou. Or might it because his master did not like seeing Gu Shizhou and Long Moyen together, and wanted to find a reason to separate them? I'm just sick of it. Di Fui dismissed him with an explanation of a mere 5 words. Be on your way. Understood. Mu Feng did not dare to ask any further, and jumped down the boat to carry out his task. Only that black-shirt young man and Celestial Masters were left on the boat. The black-shirt young man felt a sudden immense pressure. Get off! Di Fui spurted. What? The black-shirt young man raised his eyes in perplexity. Get off. Go to the courier station in town yourself, and don't even think about running away, or it'll make you regret the day you were born. Di Fui's voice was as chilly as the northern winds. All right. The black-shirt young man jumped off the ship as though he was escaping. The ship went away like a gust of wind and soon disappeared. Of course, the black-shirt young man did not even think twice about running away. He still had too much to live for. He had already grown too familiar with the perversity of Celestial Master's methods in this half-month. The black-shirt young man had been an intractable person who did not fear or bow down to anyone. However, in front of Celestial Masters, he could only behave as docile as a baby chick. Although he was forced off the boat, he still felt a refreshing sense of relief. As he was already quite near to the city, it would not take too big of a toll on him to run there. He stretched his legs that were nearly frozen, and felt that the sky had suddenly turned blue and the snow grew tender. He looked involuntarily at the direction where Gu Shijio had disappeared. His heart brimmed with surprise. So that lady was the famed national Celestial Master. Who would have thought that she would be so young and so beautiful? This young man was only 15 years old. When Gu Shijio made a name for herself, he was still a child. He had heard all about the stories of her great feats and revered her immensely. In his mind, Gu Zijia's existence was like a legend. Who would have thought that he would see her in person when he set foot in the Feixing Kingdom if it were not for Celestial Master Swa being beside him just now? He would almost already have cheered in elation upon seeing Gu Shijio. He could still see her, right? If he could just speak to her, his life would be complete. The black-shirt young man lost himself in reverie. Di Fui and Mu Feng's conversations were carried out through a directed audio spell. As the young man could not hear them, he did not know that his examination tomorrow would be hosted by Gu Shijio. In the plum forest where the trees blossom in red like flames, Gu Shijio raised her eyebrows and looked at Mu Feng, the current messenger Shangshan, who alighted on the top of a plum tree, not knowing why he has come here all of a sudden. Mu Feng was in a dilemma. As the Lord had sent him to relay the Lord's order, he was to put on the apparel of the messenger Shangshan. A wide green robe with special golden cloud-shaped patterns on its edges and a ghoulish mask. Published at 23rd of February, 2019, 12:05 and 9 seconds p.m. Chapter 1633. 1633 Mu Feng's disguise would be able to fool others, but Gu Shijio knows his identity. Therefore, although Mu Feng looked menacing, he felt unbearably embarrassed inside. The Lord sent me to notify you that as the National Celestial Master, you are to host the selection for the disciples of the Lord tomorrow without any delay. As soon as he finished relaying the Lord's message, he snapped his fingers, and a thin booklet flew to her hand. Please refer to this booklet if you have any inquiries. Due to the shortage of time, we hope that Celestial Master Gu would attend to this matter with urgency. What kind of game was Di Fui trying to play? Gu Shijio failed to comprehend this matter entirely and decided to ask. If I may ask the Shangshan messenger, doesn't the matter of auditioning the Lord's disciples fall under Celestial Masters' responsibility? How could I exceed my authority? The arrangements for this matter have been done by the Lord, and it would suffice for Celestial Master Gu to comply to his orders. Under her piercing stare, Mu Feng could not maintain his austere facade anymore, and left as soon as he finished speaking. Gu Shijio was frustrated beyond words, and just looked at the booklet in her hand. The booklet was full of words in a regular script that demonstrated exquisite calligraphy. It was his writing. Di Fui is truly a man of wonder. He has mastered multiple forms and styles of calligraphy. When he switches from one form or style to another, it would be impossible to guess that they were written by just one person alone. As Gu Shijio had been engaged to Di Fui for 8 years, she had grown familiar with all styles of his writing, and could identify his penmanship without mistake. He indeed wrote the words in this booklet. Difui always liked to write in cursive and semi-cursive, in which his words glided like dragons and seemed as though they would soar out of the dimensions of the paper. It was rare for him to write in a regular script like today. What is this person trying to do? It was his task, why would he want to shift it onto her? Was he taking advantage of her? A fire burned in Gu Zijia's heart. As the selection for the Lord's disciple involves a lot of complex procedures, she would hardly have enough time even if she started to make the preparations right now, and could not idly indulge in the scenery of the plum forest anymore. Just as that thought entered her mind, she suddenly had a realization that it was possible that Difui could not bear the sight of her enjoying life with Long Moyen. Was this the reason he assigned the task to her? Was he jealous? When this final thought emerged in her mind, her heart skipped a beat, and she quickly cast it away in denial. He had already treated her as nothing more than a stranger. How could he still be jealous? Perhaps he was just a possessive person, and even though they are not together anymore, he did not want other men to be with her due to his male chauvinism? Her rage swelled up inside her, as she felt that the last explanation was the most reasonable one. What did Difui take her for? And why would she have to listen to him? Long Moyen was standing by her side. Upon seeing the sour expression on her face, he asked, "Shijio, since you have something to attend to, why don't we go back first?" Gu Shijio took a light breath, then put the booklet inside her sleeve and replied, "It's nothing." She strode forward majestically and said, "We're in the middle of a festival. Let's not talk about anything else and just enjoy the moment." The plum forest was blossoming in its full resplendence. As people walked past, the petals fluttered down to the snowy ground like rain, forming an elegant contrast between red and white. The plum flowers that bloomed in this forest seemed to be exceptionally red, with a luxuriousness like blood, a vibrancy like fire. Gu Shijio sauntered in the plum forest. As she took taking in the fragrance of the plums, her anger subsided a little. Long Moyen was quite understanding toward her, and did not ask about the matter earlier. Instead, he struck a light conversation with her. He was quite a person of esprit and humor, and possessed great knowledge in various fields. Hence, he was able to keep her quite intrigued. Published at 24th of February, 2019. 12 o'clock and 3 seconds a.m. Chapter 1634. 1634. The plum forest was unusually big. The winding paths of the forest led into a tranquil depth where the ground was sprinkled with the petals of the red plum flowers. When travelers walk past and trample on the leaves like dirt, one cannot help but feel a certain sense of cruelty. Gu Shijio held a petal in her hand and took a closer look. The petal was quivering on her palm, and thin streams of red dripped through the creases of her palm like blood. She was surprised by the phenomenon. In her impression, plum flowers should not be flowing with liquid this red. Just when she was about to take a closer look, a light breeze started to blow nearby, and Mu Feng appeared once again above a clump of plum flowers not far away from her. This time he was dressed as himself. When he alighted in front of Gu Shijio, she was shocked and took a step back. She exclaimed, "What are you doing?" Mu Feng coughed lightly and handed a jade tablet he took from his waist to her. "Miss Gu, my master has sent me to deliver this to you. He said it's for your ease of communication with him." She was not unfamiliar with this jade tablet. It was Difui's special tool of communication. The four Heaven's Gift disciples each had one, and they were all different. The jade tablets used by the four messengers were able to transmit sounds and images. However, those used by the four Heaven's Gift disciples only retain the former function. The jade tablet that Mu Feng presented to her was the same as those possessed by the four disciples. Gu Shijio had no intention to receive the tablet. "Tell your master that I do not have any need to communicate with him, and thereby would not be needing this tablet." Mu Feng seemed to know that she would reply in this exact manner, and did not withdraw his outstretched hand. "Lady Gu, my master has said that it's important for you to care about the bigger picture. Although you are not a Heaven's Gift disciple, your status is no longer different than theirs. What they have, you must have as well. Unless what?" Gu Shijio asked almost instantly. Mu Feng sighed. "My master said that he believes that Miss Gu is someone who does not mix private interests with public matters, and would not be of trouble to me." In other words, Gu Shijio should accept the jade tablet unless she still could not forget about her relationship with him, and allowed her private affairs to impede her responsibilities. Although he did not state it overtly, Gu Shijio was astute and could grasp his implication. Her fingers tightened in her sleeves. So he would take advantage of her just like that? Why? Mu Feng feared that she would not accept the item. He scratched his head and said, Miss Gu, my master said that if you don't accept this tablet, he would skin me alive. Gu Shijio gave a tranquil smile. Don't worry. Even if he skins me alive, he won't skin you. I won't receive this jade tablet, take it back with you. Upon finishing her sentence, she began to leave. Mu Feng tried to catch up to her, and he walked beside her as he said, Miss Gu, please accept this. Even if he doesn't skin me alive, he might cast me into the mysterious fire land for punishment. What a capable fellow this Di Fui is. Gu Zijia's footsteps halted a little. Mu Feng took this opportunity to kneel before her, and held the jade tablet up high. Miss Gu, please sympathize with me. The sight of Mu Feng, who had always been seen in elevation, kneeling in the snowy ground not only shocked Gu Shijio but the people around her as well. Before she knew it, Mu Feng had already put the jade tablet in her hand. He bowed to her and said, Thank you for your kind sympathy. He then flew away. Just when Gu Shijio was deliberating whether to destroy the jade tablet, the directed audio spell on her waist began to flicker. She put the jade tablet in her sleeve and picked up the directed audio spell, from which she could hear Long Sai's voice. Shijio, the wisdom fruit has ripened early, and I've already plucked it. When would you visit the Tianwen clan? This wisdom fruit is quite special, and needs to be used within 3 days. You. Published at 24th of February, 2019, 6:05 and 3 seconds AM. Chapter 1635. 1635. The wisdom fruit was the exact ingredient needed to change one's body. According to Long Sai's estimations, the wisdom fruit should take 1 month to ripen, but it somehow matured in half a month. Maybe the heavens want her to abandon her current body and return it promptly to cut all relations with Di Fui as soon as possible. Gu Shijio took a light breath. Give me some time. It'll go over now. Long Sai had no idea that she would be that agitated. After pausing momentarily, he said, You can take some time to think about it. Perhaps come over after the Spring Lantern Festival? There's no need to think about anything, she interjected. It'll come over right now. Since it is only a matter of time before she dies, Gu Shijio wants to free herself from this mess. She raised her head and looked to the sky. The setting sun had already sunk below the horizon with roseate clouds scattered across the skyline. She hung up the directed audio spell. After bidding farewell to Long Moyen, she did not go back to the Gu residence but instead summoned the wind caller and went straight to Tianwen Mountain. Long Sai had said that the best time to change one's body is at midnight. If nothing goes awry, she will become a brand new self tomorrow. Gu Shijio did not use any warp spells to travel because she still had ample time, and wanted to accustom herself to life with a level 8 spiritual power. The space warping spell requires a spiritual power of at least level 10. Once she changes her body, she will not be able to use it anymore. The wind caller glided along the air as Gu Shijio sat inside the carriage, and beheld the scenery outside through the curtains. As she did not set a barrier to resist the wind, the currents grazed her face like a drizzle of blades. The muscle and Lu Wu did not know what she had in her mind. Lu Wu took on the form of a child and slept along the wall of the carriage while the muscle shrunk itself into the size of a plate and opened its shell near Gu Zijia's feet to converse with her. Master, you've been running errands in the Tianwen clan quite a lot recently. Have you taken a liking to Long Sai? The muscle was quite snoopy. Gu Shijio tapped on its shell. Don't talk nonsense. He and I are only friends. And they will only be friends. Some things in fate when missed will be missed forever, and have no chance of recurring again. It is no different with love as well. She knows her feelings toward Long Sai. She can treat him as a friend until death and risk her life for him. But she is unable to love him ever again. Long Sai deserves someone better. Someone who can love him wholeheartedly and has not gone through a lot of vicissitudes like her. She might marry someone in the future, maybe because of love, maybe because of a sense of obligation, but neither reason would lead her to long sigh. Muscle, if my spiritual power drops in the future, will you still treat me as your master? Gu Shijiu asked in a casual manner. The muscle became surprised. Master, once one's spiritual power rises, it would not drop. A person's spiritual power can only be depleted, but with adequate training, it will be restored. I said if the muscle raised its shell. Master, no matter what happens you'll always be my master, even if your spiritual power drops to abysmal levels. Gu Shijiu felt gratified. She knew that even though the muscle was a glutton, it would not betray her. She took a look at Lu Wu. Lu Wu was taking a nap, but it heard their conversation. It opened its eyes and said to her, "You'll always be my master. I'll never treat you otherwise." Gu Shijiu had told it all about a modern drama before. It took a special liking to stories involving special agents, and had memorized the lines therein. Gu Shijiu felt a slight warmth in her heart and patted Lu Wu. Lu Wu returned to its original form and wagged its 9 tails as it took a step back. Master, please don't touch me anymore. The bracelet that Celestial Master, Swa had put on it had retained its perverse function. Published at 24th of February, 2019, 12:05 and 4 seconds p.m. Chapter 1636. 1636 Anytime Lu Wu makes physical contact with its master, it would revert to its original form. Gu Shijiu could not help but laugh. Seeing that Lu Wu retook the form of a child and went to sleep again, she decided not to disturb it. She looked down at the firmament stone on her wrist. Once she successfully changed her body, the thing she will feel most sorry for is little Chong, as it would not be able to communicate with her again. As the firmament stone probably felt too bored the last time Gu Shijiu had swapped bodies, it managed to find a spiritual cultivation method from some corner of the universe. Once it successfully masters this spiritual cultivation technique, it would be able to communicate smoothly with Gu Shijiu no matter how many times she changes her body. That spiritual cultivation method is immensely abstruse to grasp. Therefore, it had told Gu Shijiu a month ago that it would seclude itself for half a year to master this technique. The firmament stone is deep in slumber now. It would not awake even if thunder crashes down. Maybe once it wakes up and masters that technique, it would be able to communicate with her new body without any complications. She looked out the carriage, and the night had descended upon the earth. In the darkness, a light flurry of snow began to dance without the light from the moon or stars. Perhaps it would be a bright day tomorrow? It was already the 15th day of the first month of the lunar calendar. She hoped that she would be able to see the full moon that is as big as a saucer. The carriage had traveled for about 2 hours now. She looked toward the horizon and could already see the Tianwen mountain and Long Sai's waving figure. Meanwhile, in Celestial Master's mansion, Difui felt a bit restless and agitated tonight, and could not even meditate. He seemed to have some sort of ill premonition. However, he was unable to crystallize his intuition even after performing an augury with his fingers. He walked around the observatory and took a look at the star chart, but did not notice any abnormalities. Even though the night has grown old, he still did not have any trace of somnolence. He did not want to sleep. He still had plenty of time to rest in the future. Putting on a shirt and walking out to the blizzardy storm, he was greeted by a violent gale of wind and snow in the face. He walked one round inside his mansion to try to calm down. As he still felt perturbed, he went back into his resting place. He took out a jade tablet and cast a spell on it. After a while, the jade tablet began to project a crystal-clear image that displayed the white jade chariot. The white jade chariot was empty and barren. There was no one inside. Difui knitted his brows slightly and turned his head to the corner of his house to take a look at the hourglass. It was already late in the night and Gu Shijiu would normally already be resting inside the white jade chariot. What happened today? Could it be that she was studying the booklet used for the selection of Heaven's Gift disciples for tomorrow, and had forgotten all about the time? That could not be it. In the past few months, Gu Shijiu would stay in this chariot even if she wanted to read because of the absolute quiescence it provides that prevents any disruption. In this time of night, where had she gone? Di Fui depleted quite a lot of his spiritual power every time he conjures this spell, so for the past few days he did not check on her quality of sleep daily, but once every 2 or 3 days instead. If there are any perturbations in her sleep, he would cast a spell and grant her good rest after going to her in spirit through the light reflecting from the mirror. It depletes even more spiritual power for him to send his spirit to her through the mirror, so he does not cast it lightly. After failing to notice any other anomalies, he paused for a while, then took out another jade tablet. This jade tablet could establish communication and connect to the jade tablet that he just gave Gu Shijio. Making up his mind, he activated the jade tablet. The tablet flickered, but no one picked up on the other end. Di Fui tapped on the jade tablet a few more times, but still there was no answer. Di Fui furrowed his brows and summoned Mu Feng to him. Though Mu Feng was just about to rest, he had no grievances being summoned to Di Fui. He bowed down and asked, "Does Master have any orders for me?" Published at 25th of February, 2019, 12:05 and 5 seconds AM. Chapter 1637. 1637. Have you gave the jade tablet to Gu Shijio? Mu Feng had not expected that his master would summon him so frantically just to ask this question. He nodded and answered, "Yes, I have." "Did she keep it?" "About this." Mu Feng paused. He just pushed the jade tablet to her, then left, and did not see whether she kept it. She should have kept it, right? The jade tablets from Celestial Masters Wa are invaluable. Those who had the fortune of getting one in their hands would enshrine it and treat it like the ashes of their ancestors. However, it might not be the case with Gu Shijio, especially when she had firmly refused to accept it. Mu Feng suddenly became uncertain. Could Gu Shijio have thrown that jade tablet away? Di Fui could read what Mu Feng was thinking from his expression. He took a light breath and asked again, "When you gave her the jade tablet, who was with her?" Long Moyan. Knowing Gu Zijia's behavior, it was unlikely that she would toss the jade tablet away in front of someone else, but after their breakup it would be hard to know this for sure. Di Fui ordered him, "Go to Long Moyan's mansion and ask him about her situation." Mu Feng stated his pledge, then went on to his errand. Di Fui sat in silence for a while. He then cast a spell and went straight to the National Celestial Master's mansion to check on what she was doing. He walked around the mansion but could not find any trace of her. He heard from the maidservants that she had not returned tonight. Then where would she be? Mu Feng finally obtained some news from his side. "Master, Long Moyan said that Miss Gu had kept the jade tablet with her, but after receiving a message from the head of the Tianwen clan, she just chatted for a while more and left promptly as though she had something urgent to attend to." Di Fui knitted his brows. What urgent matter might Long Sai have for her? Does Long Moyan know about what urgent matter Long Sai had in mind? Long Moyan said that he took a few steps back when she received the message through the directed audio spell, and only heard something about some wisdom fruit having ripened early. Wisdom fruit? Di Fui's expression changed. He was an excellent medical practitioner and naturally knew the uses of the wisdom fruit. It could be used to collect souls and adjust the synchronization rate between the soul and the body. What does Long Sai and Gu Shijio want to do with the wisdom fruit? Could it be? A wave of coldness surged through Di Fui's limbs at that moment. He took out his special jade tablet and attempted to contact Long Sai, but to no avail. This type of jade tablet was carried by Heaven's Gift disciples everywhere they go for the convenience of communication. It is only when Long Sai is conducting some great research meticulously that demands all of his focus that he will put the jade tablet aside. At this time of night, what great research could Long Sai be conducting? Di Fui took a deep breath and looked at the sky. There is only 1 hour left until midnight. He is currently a full 3,000 miles. Even if he put on wings and flew there now, he would not make it there in an hour. He stood on a roof with his limbs almost frozen. With a slip of the foot, he almost fell off. This noise alerted the huge dog of this home, who rushed out of its kennel and barked frenziedly at him. "Who is it?" The host of this house was quite vigilant and charged out with a wooden club in his hand. After failing to find any thief, he swore loudly and went back to his house. At this moment, Di Fui did not have enough time to return to his mansion and landed in a deserted yard. Sitting down and taking out a floral pattern jade tablet, he cast another spell. After it showed the rippling image of the interior of the white jade chariot, he conjured a spell and sent his soul into the tablet. Published at 25th of February, 2019, 6:05 and 4 seconds AM. Chapter 1638. 1638. The procedure for swapping bodies was very complicated. It would take about 1.5 hours to perform all the actions. Before Longsai performed the procedure, he advised her to consider once more. However, all his persuasions were in vain, as Gu Shizhou was very determined. Longsai had to do it. Before everything started, Gu Shizhou thought about getting in touch with Di Fui via the jade tablet. She wanted to bid farewell to him, and to let him know that he should look for others to verify the identity of a true Heaven's Gift disciple tomorrow. Once she switched to a new body, her spiritual power would be reduced to level 8. She would no longer be able to activate the spiritual pillar. After staring blankly at the jade tablet for some time, she finally decided that she should turn it on and say her last words. Suddenly, a movie scene that she watched before reminded her of how painful it was for the female lead to bid farewell to her love in the movie. She smiled wryly. The lovers from the movie were madly in love. The scene where the female lead had to bid her last goodbye was very heartbreaking. What was the big deal about her story then? The relationship between her and Di Fui was completely shattered. They probably treated each other worse than strangers. He could most probably be considered as her superior leader. Having thought of that, she started to wonder if she should make the farewell call. Her blind imitation of the last farewell seemed absurd all of a sudden. Hence, she finally decided not to make the call. She should wait until the completion of the switch and send the body back to him. She also thought about giving up her status as the National Celestial Master. She did not want to continue being his subordinate, as she wanted nothing to do with him at all. She would leave the Feishan Kingdom for good and move somewhere else. She would finally be able to travel unfettered. She was mentally prepared for the outcome, so she was prepared from the very beginning to deal with the problems that might arise. Everything in the aftermath was well arranged. She kept the jade tablet, the gift from Di Fui, in her storage bag. Everything else that was given by him was kept away altogether. She left nothing behind. Once the switch was done, she would put the body in the storage bag and send it back to him along with everything else. Gu Shizhou followed Longsai's every instruction carefully. She did not hesitate at all throughout the entire procedure. She was the kind of woman who was very determined in everything that she had decided to do. There was no space for regret. As the procedure had to be carried out in complete silence without any disturbance, it had to be done in Longsai's laboratory. The exterior was designed with strictly restrictive injunctions. The laboratory was also sealed with many security doors. Even Longsai's disciples could not enter. For security purposes, Longsai assigned 6 more disciples to patrol the surroundings of the laboratory to make sure no one could break in. Finally, Gu Shizhou laid down on the cold jade bed that was made especially for the procedure. The ice coffin was placed next to her bed. The cloned body in the ice coffin had been defrosted. The body lay in the coffin, looking very much alive. The cold jade bed was piercing cold. The stream of cold air started to penetrate through the acupuncture points on her back. The cold was unbearable, as though her blood vessels had turned into ice as a result of the extreme cold. She closed her eyes and held on to the wisdom fruit as she patiently waited for the separation of her soul from her current body. It was really cold. However, the cold was necessary. In order to preserve the condition of her body, she had to go through the immediate freezing procedure. If the same situation were to happen to a normal human, he or she would have become a living ice statue by now. But Gu Shizhou was, after all, a celestial being whose spiritual level was already at level 10. Her body thus had an involuntary defense ability. When threatened, the defense mechanism would be immediately activated, protecting her body from the penetration of the cold from the cold jade bed. It was almost midnight. It was the coldest hour of a day, which made it the perfect time to carry out the procedure for the switch to a new body. Chapter 1639. When Gu Shijie was on the bed, she tried hard to suppress the automatic response of the spiritual power of her body to resist the penetrating cold. The procedure was quite unbearable. Gu Zijie's hands started to tremble, but she kept her composure and remained calm. Since she was trading her body for her long-term peace and freedom, she would do it. She would take the pain for the sake of a better future. If possible, she would even choose to have her past and memory completely wiped out to forget about the love and the betrayal. She wanted to start anew. She asked Long Sai if it was possible for her to have the heartbreak potion, so her past emotions could be forgotten. Long Sai answered yes, but he added that it was not suitable for her use. Her soul was marked with a unique marking. Even the legendary Mengpa soup would not be able to make her forget about her past. However, Long Sai also told her that after the successful switch to her new body, she would not have the memory of being another person other than herself. She would only be Gu Shijie. Long Sai was positioned beside her as he started performing the rituals. She could feel the increasing strength of the cold on the bed. Gradually, the cold started to break through her last defense from her spiritual power and penetrated her blood vessels. She was about to lose consciousness. Bam! A very loud noise came roaring, as though the ground had cracked. The entire room shook a little. The room shook in great intensity, like a massive earthquake. The apparatus in the sealed chamber started to shake and fall off the table. The ice jade bed that Gu Shijie was lying on started to shake intensely, thus waking her up from her sleep. She opened her eyes. What was happening? Was that an earthquake? She turned to Long Sai for answers, only to notice that he was confused as well. The confusion lasted only for a few seconds as the entrance was shattered. They could hear the noise and the bustle that was happening outside. One of them shouted, "My lord! The arrival of the lord!" The voice belonged to one of Long Sai's disciples. Soon, a white shadow flashed before their eyes and entered the room. The spell that Long Sai was casting fell from his hand. He turned his head and looked up. What was the lord doing here? Before he could fully comprehend the situation, the white shadow came to them like a powerful storm that was impossible to be stopped, giving them no time to react. An enormous strike came from the white shadow. It aimed directly at the ice coffin. A loud, impactful outburst could then be heard. The white shadow started to gleam with a sudden brief burst of white light. The light surrounded Gu Shijie, who was still helplessly lying on the bed, thus pulling her up and away. Gu Shijie floated away from the bed buoyantly into the hands of the white shadow. It all happened too quickly, almost in the blink of an eye. Long Sai had no chance to react. When he finally made sense of what happened, the room was already scattered about in a mess, as though a massive hurricane had just destroyed it. The ice coffin was now in pieces. The clone body in the coffin no longer existed. As for Gu Shijie, some parts of her circulation were frozen by the piercing cold of the ice jade bed. Obtuse, her reactions were slower than usual. The blocked vessels had resisted her ability to react. When she could finally get a grasp of what happened, she was already in the arms of another man, whose hand pressed firmly against her back. A continuous flow of warm airstream continued to penetrate her skin. The warmth started to move steadily in a current to all her limbs and resolved the noxious cold that had dominated her system. The warmth regenerated the activity of her vessels and thus revived her blood circulation. The man was in a complete white. His robe was white, even his hat was white as well. His snow-white mask made him look like an ice statue. When Gu Shijie was in his arms, she felt warm, like she had just fallen into a heater. Chapter 1640. It was the Lord. He chose to use his identity as the Lord this time. The air had a herbal, flowery scent. It was a familiar and yet strange scent to Gu Shijie. She knew it was his scent. Somehow, there were other elements in his scent that she could not quite recognize. She found it a little heart-wrenching when the smell reminded her of him. "Let me go," she immediately called out. As their spiritual powers used to be of great disparity, she could not quickly get away every time he held on to her. However, this time was different. She asked him to let her go, and he did it right away. She fell off from his arms. Fortunately, her usual dexterity was able to save her from an embarrassing fall. She took a quick turn and landed on her feet. Her heart was thumping fast. De Foy's sudden appearance in such a fiery temper was entirely out of her expectation. She looked at him fixedly and uttered, "You." Before she could finish, the fruit in her hand flew away all of a sudden. It melted and disappeared before her eyes. Long Sai was awestruck and Gu Shijio did not know what to say. His courtesy suddenly came to his mind. He took one step forward and got his knees on the ground. "My lord." A strong current approached him, blew him away before he could finish his greeting. Bam! A loud noise followed. He hit the pillar right away. The unstable laboratory was already in a precarious condition before he smashed against the pillar. The final impact caused the entire laboratory to collapse, followed by the tumble of the last supporting pillar. Gu Shijio was utterly shocked. Without hesitation, she quickly launched towards Long Sai to pull him away before the entire building collapsed. Before she could reach him, she was dragged away helplessly and escaped from the collapsing building. She landed safely outside. The laboratory was rather vast, almost the size of half a soccer field. Hence, the impact of the collapse was tremendous. It felt as though the entire Tianwen mountain was affected by the remarkable crash as well. The incident had also alarmed all the other disciples of the Tianwen clan. They quickly rushed towards the direction of the incident. When they finally saw the man in white, all of them were immediately stunned and stood frozen. It was the Lord. Many of them were able to recognize their deity and panicked. They quickly kneeled and bowed before him. They would never have expected that the Lord would be at Tianwen Mountain. Most people here had only ever seen the Lord's portrait. Some of them saw him from afar during the fight against the fake celestial masters Wa. They could finally see him today. The Lord was standing a distance away from them, but his presence alone was able to cast tremendous pressure on the people around him. The sense of pressure was quite overbearing. All the men started to panic and go weak at their knees. No one would possibly doubt his identity, because no one on earth could possess the same degree of aura. His convincing display of invincible might was undoubtedly remarkable. Even heaven and earth would startle in his presence. Gu Shijio could feel his tremendous and boundless pressure. Her heart started to wrench. As the pressure started to become unbearable, her legs started to feel weak too. She could no longer stand properly. Ever since they met, this was the first time for her to face his omnipotence as a god. She tried very hard to stand upright to talk to him, but the pressure was too strong for her to overcome. She could barely utter another word. Long Sai was a man with an extraordinary spiritual power. He possessed a natural protective barrier to shelter him from any possible dangers. The collapse of the building was horrendous, but not fatal. Soon, he rose sharply from the smoldering ruins and landed safely outside. Chapter 1641. Long Sai's face was pale. Anxious and doubtful, he fixed his eyes on the Lord, who was now suspended in midair overlooking the people. He could not figure out what he did wrong that could cause such a great rage from the Lord. Under the Lord's powerful influence, Long Sai could no longer hold himself together. He kneeled immediately and uttered, "My lord." The Lord looked at him and responded, "Long Sai, do you know the crime that you have committed? Please tell me what I have done wrong." Long Sai answered, "I have said it before. Cloning is a practice that violates all rules and ethics of the world. It should no longer exist. I warned you about it 8 years ago and forbade you to carry out any activity related to cloning. Have you taken my words lightly?" Long Sai did not know what to say. Cold sweats broke out all over his body. 8 years ago, the Lord had indeed given him the warning to prohibit him from performing any sort of cloning activity to keep the ethics and principles of the feudal society. As time went by, he slowly forgot about it. How could he forget? Was it because Long Fan once occupied his body? Was it because he was too kind to reject Gu Zijia's plea, and chose to ignore the warning? He bowed and admitted, "It is my fault. My lord, I am willing to accept the punishments." The Lord's orders were unbreakable laws. No one was allowed to break his orders. Long Sai had always been well aware of that rule. The Lord's eyes were icy. If that is so, you may take the punishment and leave to the distant fire land for 3 days to make you understand the severity of the incident. The Lord answered hostilely. The distant fire land was a secret place. There were raging flames within that could turn a normal human into ashes almost instantaneously. It would still be great suffering even for someone whose kung fu was as powerful as Long Sai's. The fires would burn off a layer of skin for anyone who entered. Gu Shijie knew exactly how painful it would be to be in the distant fire land. She could no longer hold back her frustration, and took a big leap forward. I am the one who requested him to clone a new body for me. I begged him to do so. If someone has to take responsibility, I am the one who deserves to be punished. Please let him go. Di Fuyi's emergence with a fiery temper was completely out of her expectation. As Gu Shijie had been on the frozen jade bed for a while, her logical thinking could barely work out the situation. The series of events had caused her a great confusion that she had no explanation to. When she could finally get a hold of what happened, she realized she was not comfortable with the situation. Firstly, she thought that he was doing that because of the reluctance and the distress to let her go. She thought that he did not wish for her to lose her spiritual power, which led him to destroy the cloned body. She thought that he was concerned for her when he decided to get her off the ice jade bed. To her dismay, it was all about Long Sai going against his order. Long Sai was only making the cloned body for her, so she could not step aside and watch Long Sai suffer the punishment alone. Determined, she elaborated further. If someone has to go to the distant fire land, let me go on his behalf. He is only doing this for me. He is innocent. Her voice was a little shaky and hoarse as a result of the penetration of the cold. She stood her ground firmly and looked at the Lord fixedly. Under the mask, the Lord's eyes were even darker and profound. He responded in an icy tone, as though falling snow met the gusts of winter winds. Gu Shijie, did you think that I would not punish you? Gu Shijie continued to look at him. At this very moment, she finally understood the vast difference that separated them. He stood on a more superior ground like an almighty god. She was insignificant, like a speck of dust under his superior presence. Chapter 1642. There was a time when Gu Shijie stood by Di Fui, thinking that they could be on equal ground someday. She tried her very best to be his match, but now she realized it was all her illusion. He only treated her differently because she had parts of Lan Jing's soul. Once the identity no longer existed, she would be nothing more than a myriad of ordinary beings. Her memory unavoidably reverted to former times with a sort of oppressive sadness, but she managed with a smile. I have never thought so. He regarded her as a total stranger, so why would he give her another way out? Even under the pressure of his tremendous presence, she tried all she could to stand up straight and look Di Fui in the eye. I said it once, and I will say it again. If you want to punish him, you have to punish me first. I am willing to take all the punishment on his behalf. Shijie, you cannot do that. Long Sai's expression completely changed. He had got a taste of how the suffering in the distant fireland felt. It was too much for anyone to take. Even for a man like him, he had to suffer the burning flames in great agony. How would a delicate, ladylike Gu Shijie handle the pain? He would rather take it all on himself. Long Sai took a step forward. My lord, the order was for me, and I went against it. Shijie did not even know about the existence of such an order. All she wanted was a new body so she could return the original body to Celestial Masters. I heard that Celestial Masters wanted to use the body for a different reason, so she did not want to be indebted to him. She had no other way than to ask for my help. She bears no evil intention. No blame should be attached to the unconscious doer of wrong. My lord, I hope you can forgive her. The Lord turned to look at Long Sai and asked, Are you trying to bargain with me? Long Sai dared not say anything. How dare you? Anxious, Long Sai's forehead broke out in sweat. All these years, the Lord had always been a man of his word, leaving no room for others to argue with him. His orders were even stricter than the military's orders. His followers would have to follow his orders without question. His issuance of punishments would be an unbreakable law. Who would even dare to bargain with him? Those who dared to bargain would end up with an even worse form of punishment. His superior position offered no room for a straightforward approach. All his followers would have to follow his orders. Dead silence filled the air, and no one dared to make a sound. The Lord continued in an icy tone. Long Sai, you are a heaven's gift disciple. And yet you always act according to your sentiments. Your emotions blind you. You chose to disregard the overall situation and general interest. If you are not qualified to be a heaven's gift disciple, you'd better not be one. Soon, he launched a strike with a seven-colored ray that surrounded Long Sai. No. Gu Shijie was utterly shocked. Swiftly, she launched herself forward and launched a strike of her own to stop the incoming attack of the seven-colored ray. In the heat of the moment, she was too anxious to realize the strength of her strike. There was the sound of wind and thunder as she launched the attack. Surprisingly, she managed to return a strike in a multicolored ray too. Her defense hit the incoming strike from Di Fui and gave it a great thump. However, her strength was, after all, incomparable to that of Di Fui's. Her attack was strong, but it was not enough to change the course of Di Fui's attack. Long Sai screamed out loud in pain when the ray finally hit him. You can try and attack again. The Lord's voice was frosty. I will then make sure that he dies a painful death. Gu Shijie was utterly shocked. She was completely pale, and took a few steps back. For the first time, she finally understood how insignificant she was. There was nothing she could do. It was her fault that Long Sai was involved, but there was nothing she could do at this point. Chapter 1643. Gu Shijie simply stared at the Lord with eyes full of indignation. Briefly after, the seven-colored halo that surrounded Long Sai faded. Long Sai's face was pale as he kneeled helplessly on the ground. Unsure of where his wounds were, he kneeled with sweats rolling down his face. Gu Shijie was beside Long Sai, anxiously trying to read his pulse with trembling fingers. Long Sai was in great pain. His robes were all soaked in sweat, but he did not want Gu Shijie to be worried. He raised his hand and stopped her from reading his pulse. It is all right. I am fine. Let me check. Gu Shijie answered in a hoarse voice, as though she was trying very hard to repress her struggles. Please, I beg you. Let me have a look. She tried very hard to stop her body from trembling. Her face was as pale as paper. Nevertheless, she chose to focus on Long Sai with her unmoving, dark eyes. Let me have a look at you. Long Sai finally stopped resisting. Gu Shijie tried to read his pulse with the tips of her icy cold fingers. She looked very serious, like a real doctor. The circulation in Long Sai's body was a mess as his blood pressure kept surging. He could feel pain in every inch of his body, so much so that he wanted to turn and toss on the floor to ease the pain. However, he did not want Gu Shijie to be worried, so he held back his pain and gave her a comforting smile. Nothing. It is nothing. There is only a little pain. Later. It'll be fine later. Gu Shijie fixed her eyes on him without saying anything. Through the tip of her fingers, a steady stream of spiritual power slowly entered his system. The spiritual power served to comfort his messed-up circulation. His condition was not too bad, as it did not take too long for his pulse to return to its normal rate. The pain in his body had been greatly reduced as well. Finally, Long Sai stopped sweating, and his complexion returned to normal. Gu Shijie removed her hand. How do you feel now? Long Sai looked into his body condition and realized that his spiritual power seemed to have been reduced. He was about to reach level 10 before this. Now he was not even at level 9. He was actually relieved. He thought that he would lose all of his spiritual power. Fine, I am fine, he quickly explained. It was a shame that he had lost one level, but the condition was not as bad as he thought. He could always practice more and regain his current status. Gu Zijie's eyes were filled with concern. She observed his complexion again and murmured, "Your spiritual power has been reduced. Just a little. It does not matter." Gu Shijie closed her eyes for a brief moment before she continued. "How can you say it does not matter? It is very difficult for you to advance from level 8 to level 9. She hesitated. Her lips were starting to tremble, but she tried to smile. I got you into trouble. It is my entire fault. I should have behaved better. I will not do it, Aga. Before she could finish, she started to vomit blood. Her body then started to sway. Immediately, she suffered from a blackout and fell. Shijio. In a blur, she could still remember that Long Sai called her name out loud. She could feel that she fell into a man's arms. Then she lost consciousness completely. Gu Shijio was sick for 3 days. The fever came and went. She was unconscious. In her sleep, she could tell that someone kept holding on to her hand. Someone kept talking to her and telling her that she should stay strong. How could she stay strong? She was exhausted. She had always been Avery's strong and determined woman who would not rest until she had reached her goals. No matter how difficult the situation was, she would always do everything she could to overcome the problem. She had always been very optimistic. Chapter 1644. Gu Shijio had always been very optimistic in life. She believed that there was no obstacle that she could not overcome. When she was poor, she would convince herself that money was just another possession that she could always earn. If she did it right, money would eventually become her possession again. When other assassins were hunting her, she would do everything she could to escape from the threats. If she survived, she would get her revenge and make them understand why they should not mess with her. Even after Long Zai's betrayal, she could readjust her mentality very quickly to survive in a whole new era. She fought despicable men, and even dealt with objectionable women. Her life had never been more interesting. She had indeed had a great time. However, she was tired of it all now. She had always thought that everything she did was right and meaningful. She could easily deal with her debt of gratitude or revenge. At this very moment, however, nothing seemed right anymore. The relationship severely costed her love, her health and her emotions. It had even caused the doom for her friends. She was wrong, absolutely wrong. She was not as strong as she thought, and yet she kept trying to be free. Her hope was all in vain. While she was still in her state of unconsciousness, nightmares constantly haunted her. She was always sweating in anxiety and kept saying nonsense from time to time. The most frequent phrases were "I am sorry" and "I will not do it again." Even when she was unconscious, she knew that someone was always holding her hand tightly. She could hear someone apologizing to her, saying that it was not her fault. She was not always conscious. Sometimes, she could not quite differentiate the voices, as they kept fading away, but she knew that they were not from the same man. However, she did not listen clearly to what the voices were saying to her. Someone made her eat medicine. She also knew there was someone who whispered songs in her ear. The sound of the flute echoed. The melody was very comforting, like she was being cradled in the arms of her mother. Time passed and Gu Shijio had been trapped in the stupor state for a while now. Finally, she was able to regain consciousness. She slowly opened her eyes. The first thing that caught her eyes was the delicate wooden framed window. There was a single twig of plum flower along with shadows all over the paper window from a distance. The window was half open. The light of the setting sun shone through, giving the room a warm sense of evening glow. The silver pot in the corner of the room was still boiling with some medicine. The herbal scent filled the entire room. The back of a man was facing her. He was busy stirring the medicine in the pot. The man was wearing a light green robe, seemingly tall and slender. His figure was unquestionably attractive. Her movement on the bed had caught his attention. The man turned around and lit up immediately with great delight. "Shijio, you are finally awake." "Teacher Long, I am sorry." The man was Long Sai. Before Gu Shijio could finish her apology, he signaled her to stop apologizing any further, and gave her a comforting smile. "Don't say sorry anymore, alright? I have listened to it far too many times over the past few days." Soon the medicine was ready. Long Sai poured the herbal soup from the pot, and filled the bowl to its fullest. He took medicine to Gu Shijio and instructed, "Come, drink it." The boiling hot herbal soup had already been adjusted to a tolerable temperature when he passed it to her. It was neither too cold nor too hot. It was perfectly drinkable. He held the medicine in one hand and 2 sweets in the other. The taste of the herbal soup is a little bitter. Take the sweets after you drink it. Gu Shijio did not argue any further and consumed the herbal soup. She drank it all. The herbal soup was indeed bitter, almost as unbearable as Coptis chinensis 1. She did not seem to notice the bitterness though. She did not even frown a little. After taking the medicine, she did not even ask for the sweets. Long Sai noticed the changes. He knew that she had always been afraid of the taste of bitterness. When she was sick or hurt, she would always choose to take pills or modern medicines, as she was strongly against the idea of Chinese medicines. She would not agree, even if it was the best for her. Whenever she had no other choice, she would need a few sweets to keep the bitterness away. Chapter 1645. Because of her incapability to deal with the taste of bitterness, Long Shi would always tease her by saying that an assassin should not possess such trait. Gu Shijio remembered answering. An assassin is still a human with flesh and bones. It is normal to have one minor imperfection. Now, she could finally overcome her so-called imperfection. The sweets would actually interfere with the effectiveness of the medicine. So Long Sai chose to make no further comment, and filled another glass of water for her instead. Gu Shijio noticed that she was still in the territory of Tianwen clan. The place that she was currently staying must be one of the guest rooms. After drinking the glass of water, she immediately put her fingers on Long Sai's wrist. Long Sai knew that she was worried about his condition, so he did not hide his wrist away and let her read his pulse. "Don't worry, I am doing fine," he explained. "Didn't he send you to the distant Fire Land?" Gu Shijio asked immediately. The question had been haunting her for days, even when she was unconscious. Long Sai's spiritual power had been significantly reduced. She was concerned that he would no longer be able to tolerate the extreme heat. In one of her many nightmares, she saw that Long Sai was burned alive and became entirely charred. Long Sai shook his head. No, he did not. He seemed to be occupied by another matter, and left urgently. The Lord left in a hurry. Before he went, he did say that he would postpone the punishment regarding the distant Fire Land, and that they would talk about it soon. Swiftly, he then disappeared into thin air. Gu Shijio was relieved. Seemingly, it was Long Sai who had been taking care of her for the past few days. She got him into trouble, and yet he still lavished every care on her. Gu Shijio looked down in guilt. She did not know what to feel about it. There was a mixed feeling of gratitude and guilt. She regretted her impulsive mistake. She should not have assumed that she was strong enough to be evenly matched with the man. It was a very dumb move. She promised not to repeat the same mistake. However, she did not quite understand why Di Fui would become so infuriated. If he really wanted to find another body to revive his past love, she would be very happy to return the body to him. In that case, he would never have to look for another perfect replacement for Lan Jinka if the switch succeeded. Both of them could achieve 2 things in one go. What was he angry about, then? If this were before, Gu Shijio would easily overthink that the reason for his fury was because Di Fui hated to see her spiritual power being wasted. She would assume that his love for her still existed, and that he still cared for her. However, the recent series of events made it clearer for her to see that she should not, and would never again, think that he still cared for her. The man was a man with a plan for everything he did. He was probably angry because her decision might have a critical impact on his overall strategy, and mess up the entire plot. Di Fui. Di Fui. His name used to make her feel genuinely warm. Now his name was nothing but a bitter disappointment. The room returned to its usual silence. Quietly, Long Sai read her pulse to monitor her condition. Her pulse was still weak, but stable. 3 days ago, she vomited blood because she was too agitated by her fury that was burning within. Also, it was one of the consequences of the unfinished procedure. Luckily, 3 days of careful treatment gradually nursed her back to health. Her physical health was restored, but what about her emotions? Her emotions were hurt more badly than her physical being. Other than her inconceivable murmur, she exhibited her suicidal thoughts while she was still unconscious. She seemed to have lost all hope. Perhaps that was one of the reasons for his unconsciousness. Long Sai was very worried that she might not wake up. Long Sai was worried that she might not want to live any longer. Immediately, he served her a bowl of hot fish soup to make sure she had something to eat. Shijiao, come. Eat something. Gu Shijiao agreed instantly. All right. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.